Yeah, Ricky! Up next, he's a Marine Corps combat veteran. He's a father of 5. He's the host of 7 Figure Squad. He and his wife, Sheena, are the #1 earners in the history of PHP. Big round of applause for Matt Sapaula! Next to the stage, he's Miami's most eligible bachelor. He has a podcast called Soscast, where finance meets romance. He's the co-host of the PBD podcast. Big round of applause right now for Adam Sosnick! And last, he's a visionary entrepreneur, a thought leader. He loves the country and he loves balsamic glaze. Please help me welcome to the stage your host, the one and only Patrick Bet-David! Keep the applause going, guys, one more time. Give it up for PBD. Everybody can sit down.
The last person we're going to bring up, because we have to bring him out here as well. This is a man, by the time he's done, you wish he would have ran for office this year, but he's not yet. All libertarians, when I did a podcast, I think a year and 2 months ago, with another lady named Jo Jorgensen, she is the reason she brought us together. What an incredible, special moment that we had together. Dave Smith is a comedian, probably one of the most powerful voices on social media today on many different topics. You'll know, if you don't know about him, you're going to learn about him today. Give it up, Dave Smith! Man, grab a seat.
Thank you.
Oh, it's a little chilly in here.
Yeah. Let's do this. Okay. How many of you guys watched the podcast this morning, by the way? Anybody watch any of it this morning? Did you watch the whole thing, or you just kind of watch a clip of it? What'd you watch? The whole thing? Parts of it? Let me just tell you, whoever, by the way, let me put it to you guys this way, how crazy it was this morning with our podcast. The guest we had on the podcast today, I don't know the last time he was trending. It's fair to say 2016. An hour after the podcast, he's been trending all day on Twitter today. All day, thanks to the friendly conversation we had on the podcast today, which is fantastic. For those of you that haven't seen it, we'll give you a clip. You'll get a good understanding of it. Dave, for the audience that doesn't know you, do you mind taking a minute and just introducing yourself to everybody? We've got a lot of topics to go through. Some of you that are here for the first time, we're going to talk a lot of politics today. We're going to talk some business today. We're going to talk a lot of politics. We got some crazy things that's going on. We got a couple of weird videos to give you. We're going to talk about the movie Sound of Freedom. Anybody seen the movie Sound of Freedom? Yes or no? Record breaking. It just hit $100 million, by the way. It tops Mission Impossible. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a few other things. Matt's got a few things to talk about with pay raises, as well as a story that came out from Insider. Americans are moving to Japan for its safety and affordability. I can totally see Okafor moving to Japan for safety and totally see that part. And then we got a couple other weird things going on. One of the topics here that Adam was really insisting we had to talk about, it's a topic that the title here will give it away. Marriage outdated? 2 out of 5 adults think the tradition no longer matters. We're going to see how you feel about it. We're going to see how Adam feels about it. Everybody else here is married, but maybe Adam's going to have a different perspective.
Maybe I'll get married after the show. Maybe there's someone in the crowd. What we got?
I believe in miracles. That's a tough one here, but we'll see what happens. So, Dave, for people that don't know you, if you don't mind taking a moment and introducing yourself.
Sure. I'm Dave Smith. I was the campaign director for Anthony Weiner. We didn't quite get him over the hump, but we did what we could. Now, I'm Dave. I'm a stand-up comedian and a libertarian podcast host and talker of shit.
Talker of shit.
Yeah.
Yes, shit talker. There's no question about it. So I think we just kind of talk about what happened today, and we'll go on to all the other topics, right? Rob, do you mind showing a glimpse of what happened today on the podcast? Now, how many of you know who Anthony Weiner is? Raise your hand if you know who Anthony Weiner is. How many guys don't know who he is? Raise your hand if you have no clue who Anthony Weiner is. Okay. How would you describe who Anthony Weiner is?
Okay, so Anthony Weiner was a congressman from my hometown, New York City, and he's a congressman named Weiner.
It's not Weiner.
And he, nope, unfortunately it's pronounced Weiner. And he accidentally tweeted a dick pic.
Yeah.
Now, in his defense, these were the early days of Twitter, and we all made mistakes.
Of course.
But he was trying to direct message a dick pic to some chick, and he accidentally just tweeted it. And then he immediately...
A 14-year-old chick.
No. This is not the 14-year-old. That came later.
Oh, my bad.
He was just trying to message some chick of age, just good Christian fun. And so now this is the early days of Twitter, okay? So he tweeted it instead of sending the message, immediately realized he tweeted it, and then hit delete. And I guarantee in his mind he went, caught it. Because he didn't understand how the internet works. So he deleted it, but there were 500,000 screen grabs of this thing already. And so he was forced to resign in disgrace for being a congressman named Weiner who tweeted a dick pic.
By the way, can we do a poll, PBD? Real talk, men. Right now, raise your hand if you got a picture, dick pic in your phone right now.
Wow, wow, Sapaula.
And by the way, men, just before
Come
you
on,
answer,
full disclosure, come on.
we will be checking phones after the show.
Sapaula went there.
We're gonna find out.
We'll be confiscating phones by the end of the show.
By the way,
I know you got something, Okafor. Come on, stop it, bro.
What Matt just asked, what Matt, FYI PHP, just some of you guys that are here, this is not the typical way we talk at the conventions, but get used to it. This is the podcast.
That's how Sapaula started it. Let's just...
So, but go ahead. So what else could you say about him? So aside from that, what happened with Weiner? At one point, this guy's about to be a mayor. He was number 2 in the campaign for New York City.
He made a comeback after having to resign in disgrace. He comes back. He's running for mayor of New York City. Not a small job. He is in the top of the polls when yet more dick pics come out. And that's New York City. Listen, we're a harsh but fair people. Like we were still considering him after the first dick pic. Yeah. But then the second dick pic, we were like, dick pic me once, shame on you. You know? But like the second dick pic, we were like, that's too much. He plummeted in the polls. Now, Anthony Weiner also was married to Uma Abedin.
Uma Abedin, yes.
If I'm pronouncing her name right, who is Hillary Clinton's right-hand
Can you show the
woman.
picture, Rob, so they know? Go for it.
She's Hillary Clinton's closest advisor, highest level confidant, and there's some speculation, maybe even more. I don't know about that. But so then Weiner, in 2016, another scandal comes out where this time I think he had actually messaged an underage girl. And this was a whole thing. I forget exactly how it went down, but the NYPD went and raided his house. They seized his laptop. Now they realized that on this laptop, there are a ton of emails from his wife, which also include a whole bunch of emails from Hillary Clinton. And this is actually what prompted Comey to reopen the Hillary Clinton investigation just a couple weeks before the election. So this guy, in some ways, got Donald Trump elected president. Yeah. It was certainly one of the
He's an American hero.
Yeah, listen, the guy,
he
at
did
the
the
end he
country
came
service.
through.
It all starts with
I
a
gotta
dick
thank
pic.
him. I want to meet this guy. Tell him thank you.
You try making an omelet without a few dick pics.
So, having said that, this is what happened on today's podcast, a very friendly conversation we're having. And I simply asked a question. It was not a crazy question. It was a simple question, and it led to this. So, Rob, if you got it, if you can show this clip so we can get a reaction to it, and then we'll go from there. And Paula Grober, Danny Casolero. Can you see the video or no? Because I don't see the video on the cameras. Just so you know, I don't see myself on the videos here. Ilana, if you can put the videos here so we can see them the way it was this morning, because right now I'm seeing myself. Okay, perfect. So if you want to go to the, is this it?
This is the 1-minute clip. That
Perfect.
We
That's
posted
the one I
tonight.
want you to show. Go for it. Oh man, Paula Grober, Danny No, not this one, Rob. Casolero. Not this one. No. I want you to go to the one. Go and that's Valuetainment. Go to my personal account. go to my personal account. If you can show the screen with Twitter, if you can, just stay here with me. I don't need to see myself. There you go. If you go to my personal account and go a little lower, that one right there, all the way at the top. That one right there. Make that bigger. It's like 59 seconds. And pissing people like you off. That's my... Okay, go back. Go for it. Play it.
Served in the military and dragging their name
I
through
have
the
a
dirt.
reputation to ask tough questions and pissing people like you off. That's my
including
reputation.
Including dead people who I'm going to stand up for.
Oh, trust me. We are standing up for them more than you are standing up for them.
Let's say you better get back to that list because we're going to clear some people's names today.
My question for you is, how is it that in the last 50 years, we don't have a single candidate? Everybody has their own. Hey, John F. K. was a playboy with Marilyn Monroe. Trump, Karen McDougal, Stormy Daniels. You know, George Bush linked to 9/11 and weapons of mass destruction. Bill Clinton linked to Arkansas women, all this others. Everybody has a reputation. How is it that the reputation that follows them is people close to them die? Why is that a story that many people believe in? Why is that?
Are the Clintons in their 70s yet? You don't think I can make a list of other people who are 70-something years old and say this person died, that person died, this person died? Hold on.
How come they haven't done that with Bush? He's in the same age.
I have no freaking idea why they haven't.
How come they haven't done that with Trump?
Hold on a second. So are you saying, so you agree with what I'm saying?
How come they haven't done that with Reagan?
So
how come they haven't done that with Kerry?
What point are you making about these men and women who you listed?
How is it so many people close to them die? How is it so many people close to them
everybody dies?
How is
are
it
you
so
suggesting?
Many
Okay.
I'm asking the question.
You're asking a bizarre question.
Exactly.
Did people
die?
You off. Did people die? No. What pisses me off, and I'm going to say this again because you apparently are not listening to me. You read a list of people off an obscure website of conspiracy theory, taking a Venn diagram of everyone that ever worked in the orbit of someone who served in public life for 50 years, and you listed them, including people in the military, including strangers you could not pull out of a, and you are implying that there's something nefarious. Let me finish my thought. Let me finish my thought.
Please do so, because I got another source coming in here for you.
You're implying both with the question and with the website. The website says it explicitly. You're implying it. Let me finish.
Go ahead.
You're implying that something.
You are implying until he's done. Go for it.
You are implying that something nefarious is afoot both with the question and with the list. Hillary Clinton, she's a big girl. I'm a big boy, you're a big boy. The people that you just listed,
they're all...
Listen to me. No, these are obscure people that you could not pull out of...
Great politician, buddy.
Wait a minute, hold on.
Fantastic.
You know what? You are the classic bully. You list someone's name, and are you going to go back and clarify?
Anybody that's the bully,
are you going to go clarify?
You know what the qualities of your personality is. You want to really know that.
Ad hominem attack on me is going to somehow clear that person's name?
There isn't anybody at this table that's a bigger bully than you.
I tell you. Oh yeah? You just listed some stranger with PFC.
Very good, deceptive way of pinning. Good for you guys.
You're reading You're reading a conspiracy website.
Good for you.
Some people say. Some people say, look at that fucking website.
Just sent to you. Pull up the Wikipedia.
You want
Wikipedia conspiracy website. By the way, this went on. Literally, this went on from
2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, technically, the awkwardness started before the podcast.
5 minutes before the podcast.
He was very disrespectful when he showed up.
Yeah.
Intentionally. Perhaps.
And then he apologized in the last 10 minutes, which was, respectful for him to do it.
Yeah.
He was being a dick.
Maybe a dick pic.
Yeah. No, he didn't text me anything. I didn't get any text from him afterwards.
Check your phone, Pat.
No, I'm not going to get any text from him.
Check
so, but listen, from your perspective, you were saying something in the back about him on how this happened. You made a point right now about the fact that if it wasn't for him, maybe Trump doesn't become a president. And you're absolutely right, indirectly.
Well, look, the thing is, like, in an election as close as the 2016 election was, any one major factor, kind of is the difference. So, that was certainly a major factor. I just can't get past, look, man, this guy was sexting with an underage girl, totally humiliated his family publicly, and then the idea that he's just like morally lecturing you, that you had the nerve to bring up the fact that a ridiculous amount of people very close to the Clintons have died. And but you're just not allowed to, you didn't say, the Clintons have murdered these people. You went, hey, what's up with this? And just the moral, condescending to you as if this was some outrageous offense. We're not allowed to even think of the possibility that maybe politicians have people murdered. Now who's being naive, Kay? That famous line from The Godfather? Look, these people, the Clintons, these are people who we all know have had people murdered in mass numbers. We just call that foreign policy. We just call that when they decide we're going to go on a bombing campaign in Iraq, as Bill Clinton did throughout both of his terms, had a massive blockade around Iraq where the UN estimated 500,000 children starved to death, okay? This was the UN's estimates. I'm not sure if they're right or not. But the idea that people who do that for a living would be so uncomfortable also off the clock, being like, yeah, I'm okay with this guy being killed, is not that wild of a jump to me. And if you want to do a deep dive into it, I'm not going to go full Alex Jones here, but there's a lot of very suspicious deaths around the Clintons, and it's totally fair to bring that up.
Yeah, it's. By the way, I will say, have you seen his documentary or no? The documentary called Weiner, and it's not a porn. It's,
no.
actually
Yes,
a
I did.
documentary.
I did see it. I did. I forgot about it. I did. It's the documentary of his comeback.
When I watched it originally, I thought it starts in a weird way. I'm like, here's a documentary, Weiner. Last night I get home. Vinny, where's Vinny? Vinny, you told me to watch it. Vinny's somewhere around here. Yeah, he said, Pat, you may want to watch this documentary. I get home at midnight from here, and I sit down. I'm like, I'll watch half of it. I'll watch the other half in the morning. Next thing you know, an hour and a half later, I'm finishing the whole thing. It feels like 5 minutes. What they did during that campaign with him and his wife, everybody has to watch, because the one area you got to give him credit, this guy was an incredible campaigner. And if there's one quality that he has that's very hard for most people to have, and you almost need this, because obviously, you know, if you can get away with, you know, the texting side, set the texting part aside, and you just kind of flirt, and set the under the 18 side. He's a super competitive, psychopath competitor like many of these other guys, but the guy is shameless. And there was an element of being shameless and relentless that he was not gonna let that. Right after the second story comes out, he says, babe, there's a scene, you guys will see this. Right, there's like, so you're gonna get in the video or what? We gotta make a campaign video. It says, a story just came out that you just texted a 50. Do you want to get here in this video or not? We need to make a campaign video. Do you understand what I just said?
There's one point, if you remember, I actually forgot about this documentary, but I did watch it. There's one point, it was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in a documentary, if you remember right at the end, when the whole thing's just collapsing for him.
The girl's chasing him.
Everything's going down and is collapsing in the polls, and it's clearly not happening. And the guy behind the camera, he's in this moment where he's just so down, and the guy behind the camera actually asks him, he goes, why are you letting us do this? Like, why are you letting us record this moment? And he's just like, I don't know.
Oh,
man.
we asked him the question today. Adam, I think you asked him the question today. What was his answer to you? He says, I said, have you seen it? He says, I've never seen the documentary. And I said, how come you never seen it? He says, for an opportunity one day in an interview like this to tell you I've never seen it. Yeah. I said, well, why haven't you? I said, why'd you even why'd you do it? What was the purpose of doing it? He says, I don't know, so people can kind of see what the story was like behind closed doors. You know, but when we asked him the question, I said, so what do you think about Hillary Clinton? You know, honorable, honest people? Very honorable, very honest, great people, et cetera, et cetera. This guy literally sounded like a full-blown flag carrier, and the word that came out, I don't want to speculate anything, but I'll tell you the word that came out of my mind. And this word, I got to give credit to this word to, I believe, Vinny, if I'm not mistaken. You ever heard what a dead man switch is? You ever heard of a dead man switch? Yes. Can you pull up the definition of a dead man switch? A dead man's switch, okay? Okay, pull it up, zoom it in so we can read this. Adam, if you can move your feet, I can't see it.
Yes, sir.
Is a switch that is designed to be activated or deactivated if a human operator, go a little bit to the right, human operator becomes incapacitated, such as through death, loss of consciousness, or being bodily removed from control, originally applied to switches on a vehicle. So meaning, because he knows everything. I said, Anthony, you know. And there was a moment, it's like I'm saying, I know for a fact, you know what, nobody here knows more.
I don't know anything.
And he's looking at me like, you know, how are you alive? How are you alive? The only way you can be alive is because of this. Where they fear if they do something that maybe like this is going to come out and something's going to trigger story being emailed to everybody in media, and they're going to be like, holy shit. So that is the only way I can, in my mind, justify why he's alive, why he builds them up, why they protect each other, and why the other people are sitting there saying, let's leave this guy alone. Now, obviously, all of this is speculation.
Yeah.
No one knows if there's credibility behind it or not, but it's worth speculating.
Well, I think that, like, one of the things that we kind of learned from the whole Jeffrey Epstein scandal is that there are, at least in this one major example, there are these attempts to gather blackmail on very powerful people. And this is part of the reason why really fucked up people rise to the top. Because people who are, say, if you're, say, texting with an underage girl and someone has information about that, they now can control you completely. That's what the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing was, essentially. He'd invite these powerful people out to parties. He'd be like, there's parties, there's tons of chicks there. There'd be cameras in every room. You go there, you hook up with one of the chicks. The next day, Jeffrey Epstein goes, by the way, she was 15, and also you're gonna be voting no on this legislation that's coming across your desk next week. That was essentially, there's some speculation whether he was working for the CIA or Mossad or who he was working for exactly, but that's basically the operation. My guess would be someone like Anthony Weiner. We may know some of the dirt on him, but who knows how much dirt all of these people have on him. So he may be very required to, when Hillary Clinton comes up, you go to bat defending what a noble person she is, or else.
You know what's crazy, Pat, that blows my mind? That so many people are oblivious to this. How much back-end crap goes on, where there's blackmailing each other. For example, you think about the Clintons, for example, you're thinking about these powerful people. They've been in power. To a normal, everyday person like you and me, you don't think about killing somebody because you don't have a lot to lose. You don't have anything to lose. You lose a job, you'll get the next one. You lose whatever, company fails, you're only making $200,000, $300,000 a year, you go start another company. But when you're in power for so many years at the highest level of your life, and you're making this much money, and that chair that you have makes you so much money, you'll do anything to keep it. But everyday people can't think that way because you don't even imagine of killing your boss if they fire you, because the reality is, what do you have to lose? You don't have a lot to lose. But when you have your entire power to lose, and even the Bible says about that it corrupts people. King David did it. That's why he went to go sleep with the wife of his general, and then wanted to cover up by putting the general on the front lines to have him killed. God's men have done this. What makes you think these politicians are not doing that? I mean, the Bible tells us, it shows us examples of this. So the fact that in politics, when people are you defend your candidate as if they were never to do anything wrong, or your party's the one that, oh my God, it's bro, you can't imagine what's going on behind the scenes. They have to keep their power, and they will compromise, and they will kill if they have to, just like King David killed in order to keep his secret the fact that he had impregnated the wife of one of his generals.
I gotta say, it's very soothing to know you have no desire to kill your boss like any kind of
that's why I don't do well with bosses, because I do have those thoughts. So, and with my record, I come through.
By the way, Ricky walks in, we're having dinner. I say, Dave, this is Matt and Matt Sapaula. Here's who they are. This is what they do. Here's Rodolfo and Ceci Vargas. They're doing this. They're doing that. Here's Ricky. He just got out of jail just last week, and so very cool. Good to meet you.
I don't know. I looked at it, checked out to me. I was like, welcome home, dude.
But you paid your debt. The only person, everybody, you got to know that the only person here looks like they're dressed appropriately for the location in South Florida. We got to give it up. Ricky's out there. Look at him right there. With the calves, with the shirt. We're dressed in suits. The heater is on. Anyways, let's go to the next story. Next story, marriage outdated. Marriage outdated. Adam, be ready. 2 in 5 young adults think...
That picture is kind of selling the idea.
Yeah, exactly. With the Uma.
2 in 5 young adults think the tradition no longer matters. A survey reveals that 2 in 5 young adults consider marriage an outdated tradition, with 85% believing that a fulfilling and committed relationship doesn't require marriage. The sentiment is more prominent among women, 52%. Wow, 41% men. The survey reflects a broader trend, as 1 in 4 40-year-olds in the U.S. have never married. And 34% of people 15 and older have never been married. 15 and older. 15 and old, never been married. Okay. The rising cost of weddings is a major deterrent, and 73% of millennials and Gen Zers considering it too expensive. Young adults feel judged for not being married, especially by their mothers. 69% of women, 27% of men. Fear of divorce is also a significant factor, with 47% expressing concerns, and many couples lack plans for shared responsibilities like pets and children in case of a breakup. So Adam, what do you think about this article here?
Well,
is marriage worth it? Is it not worth it? What are your thoughts on this? I mean,
let me just say this. I think that at the end of the day, men and women are better together. I think we're here with PHP. I think you guys, how many of you guys are married couples working together?
There you go. There you go.
Literally everyone.
Exactly.
And I'm not pandering to the audience. I genuinely believe that. Respect.
But 90% of hands we just went up.
Yes. Well, I don't know what that was. But you might have saw that it was trending on social media. Me and my ex-girlfriend, Chelsea Handler, had a bad breakup.
Yeah. Heartbreaking. I remember you were emotional about it.
I'm into that used up 50-year-old lady vibe. And I think there's two things going on here. I think, number one, women have been fed a bowl of lies from modern day feminism, telling them that they don't need a man, go out, work, like make your money. Why need a man in your life? Just do it by yourself. And I think that's just an absolute shame, because I think that women, the number one role of a woman, whether it's...
Here we go.
Here it is. I think, and I ask married women all the time.
Get the shoes ready, lady.
Here we go.
Ladies.
I don't care how much money you make, what you do for business, the best thing you've ever done is have children and raise great children, okay? I'm looking at many women right here. As amazing as Sheena is, and as amazing as Marlene is, whoever's out there, your kids are the best. Are they not? Okay, you would trade everything you're
notice
doing
how
here.
quiet they were?
Well, yes.
Just recently, you know, it's been summer, kids been home. It's like, listen, my kids are not good. They're not going to school right now.
No, I know.
Parents feel it, you know, if you got the kids at the house.
And I know, Matt, with your dozen kids, you know what I'm saying about this, brother. And then I think that women, when they enter this modern day mindset of feminism, men, when they make money, they look for dependence. Yo, I'm a man, I made my money, let me go find my girl, I'm gonna have a family, I'm gonna do my thing. A lot of women are like, I'm independent, I don't need my man. So it's sort of counterintuitive. Men are very fearful these days. Why? Because of the court systems. 98% of alimony are men paying women. So 98%, not 90, like, these are very high numbers. So I do a show called Soscast where finance meets romance, and I have these difficult conversations about prenups. Nice little plug there. You like that, Pat? And like you just saw the soccer player who hid his assets in his mom's name, and the woman divorced him. And basically what happened was she came after his assets. He's like, I ain't got no money, baby. Like, I got nothing. The mom had it all. And ironically enough, she's a hot model. She makes $1 million a year. Now she's paying him alimony, allegedly.
That's beautiful.
So I think,
Come on, guys. We only win 2% of the
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
We have to celebrate.
You do realize that the leader's bulletin says Erica Juarez, so that's beautiful. Because if we ever get divorced, Erica's going to be paying me since I don't have anything. You know what I mean? My plaques say Erica Juarez.
Well, he just got out of jail. Everything's in his mom's name. You know how that thing works.
I'm good.
I think what society is lacking is genuine examples of what great relationships and marriages and families look like. That's why I love PBD and his family, because what an amazing situation. The only other person that I would constantly look at and be like, wow, that's the man, is Tom Brady. Super Bowl winning quarterback, GQ, stud, millionaire, this, that, the other, model wife, Giselle, hot, this, family, kids, and it's like, she leaves Tom Brady. And I say this all the time, it's like, Giselle, I know you're hot and all, but good luck finding another Tom Brady, right? So I think society, what's the Wall Street Journal article about crumbling values in America today? Religion, family values, community service, marriage. Like, I think we're trending the wrong way, and I think that it's incumbent on men and women to understand what's happening in society today and not just like, oh, Adam, you're an asshole, you're a chauvinist. No, I want to get married. I want to have a family. I want to have kids, but I also want to be aware of the pitfalls of what's going on today.
Yeah. Well, it's like reading this article, I mean, it's very, to me, it's very sad. Number one, because it's just, like you said, it's a clear sign of like societal decay that we would even be in this situation. Look, the objective reality is that marriage is the best situation for children. And that should be our priority. What's best for the children? And there's something so perverse about our current culture where there's so much focus on kind of like the individual. This is one of the things that drives me crazy about always celebrating people who come out as trans. And they're like, oh, this is wonderful. You're being who you are. You know, you were always a woman and you have to live as you feel. And like, no one ever seems to go like, hey, what about the kids?
And what about your
Is
penis?
this not different? Well, yeah, turns out you don't have to do anything to that now. But it's just like there doesn't seem to be concern about this. And by the way, that's how society continues, is through children. And just to your point, Adam, I mean, look, I would say, I don't think it's just like a thing for women. I mean, I love my career. I really love it. I have my dream job. I love doing stand-up comedy. I love doing cool shows like this. I love it. I make a very good living, not compared to some people, but compared to the general population, I do very well. And I have a career that I'm passionate about, that I love. That's pretty rare. It's a small percentage of society who has that. And still, if you were to ask me, what's the most meaningful or important thing in my life? It's not like career is number 2. It's such a distant number 2. Like, the older you get, the more you realize all that really matters is family. That's all that matters. And I think it's very easy, particularly for women, just because they do have more of a biological clock, just that's the reality, than men. It's very easy when you're 25 to be like, I don't really care about any of that. I'm having fun, I'm doing my thing. And then it's very easy to do that up until you're 35. And by the time you're 35, you're up against it. You're in a high-risk pregnancy if you get pregnant at 35, no matter what it is.
Pregnancy is what it is.
You're increased the risks of something going wrong. On top of that, if you're 35 and single and you want to have kids, you better find the guy like immediately.
Ladies, I'm single out there. If you're out there, where we at?
And I think there's kind of this, I remember being young, like being really young and feeling like 40 was really old. You remember like that feeling of like what 40 felt like when you were 20?
Sure, 28.
And you were like,
I've been 40 for 3 years now, Dave, so I get it.
Well, you're really experiencing it. But like you remember that, and it almost feels like that's like the end. Like 40's the end, But it's not. It's the halfway point. And so, like, it might feel great at 25 to be like, oh, I don't need a family, I don't need kids. Like, okay, but how are you going to feel at 55, 60, 65, 70, 75 when other people have their kids and their families around them and you have, like, nothing? And, the tragic thing about it is that there's no going back at that point. Like, you've kind of got to figure this out now. And so it's awful that we don't, like... How do we not as a culture like promote to young people that the best thing you can do is get married and have a family?
I'll say
Can I add one thing too, and then I'm gonna give you Matt.
The best thing for me was getting married to my wife, Sheena. Best thing ever happened in my life was marrying my wife. I got married at 21, 22 years old, coming out the military. Had my son at 22 years old. Got divorced at 22 years old. Filed bankruptcy at 22 years old. PTSD at 22 years old. Babe, remember we were moving our boxes? I showed you my PTSD certificate. It went to the shredder to shred. I wish I kept it. But I'm going through all this stuff. And some of the worst dark moments in a man's life is knowing that your children just got ripped away from your house, that you have to be told by the courts when to see your kids, that the courts say you pick your kids up at the Walmart here, the parking lot, you meet here, and like you have supervised visitation, all this bullshit. Yeah. And when you see your child support money going and it's not going to the child, so men will look at it that way. And that's the way I looked at it. So for me, I did a deep dive into my faith. When I looked at that Wall Street Journal, this is when I started going to Calvary Church in Orange County, Calvary Church. What's that mall there? In South Coast Plaza, right there, Calvary Church. Yeah, Raw Reese and Greg Laurie. He was out there. They had Bible studies on Mondays, and they're talking to me about the design of marriage. I'm like, well, I've never heard of this stuff before. And so I wasn't around the example of husband and wife together being raised by a kid. Now, granted, my father was around. He was there, but typical Filipino dad, never said anything until you did something wrong, right? And then I learned how to just not talk to my father because I didn't want to be told I was doing it wrong. But if you're looking at my 14 years after I got divorced, I said, I'm just gonna do my thing. I focused on my business, 14 years. She's gonna come. Now, as a man, I felt I could wait. Build my business, I could wait, evolve, because I felt more confident as a husband if I was a provider and a protector. If I wasn't providing, if I wasn't protecting, I wouldn't feel good as a man. And then, baby, remember we decided to get married. So let's just go into our pastor's office and just do the swearing in there. Our mothers found out. Like, oh no, you're not gonna do that. Next thing you know, family comes in. We spent, how much was our budget for our wedding? $1,000. How much was your wedding dress? $100 for a wedding dress.
Save that money,
baby. Our wedding downstairs, everybody's pumped up, excited. I mean, it was, to me, I was biased to it, but we just felt that was an awesome wedding.
That is so cool. Would you mind talking to my wife? At some point? Just maybe you guys hang out a little bit together.
The best thing she said, babe, you know what? I don't care about spending money on her wedding. I'd rather invest in her marriage.
That's a wife right there, y'all.
That's a wife.
Sheena, you got any younger sisters? You got any like? Right. But hey, Pat.
She has a brother.
I think she has a brother. All right, I'll take what I can get.
You have a brother?
Throw a wig on that thing and trans these days. I don't care. I'm getting a prenup though, Sheena. But you said something very interesting, Dave. That you said the best environment to raise children is with a dual parent household, right? PBD, you did an entire episode about this. That the second best is actually with a single father. That the stats are actually quite comparable to a dual parent household to that of just a man raising a child, and then it just plummets if it's a single mom. What was that? What was that?
Yeah,
study?
that's what it was. Like the power of having a father figure in your life. It's a difference. Like if
there's
I'm at
no
the
moral
house,
authority, Pat. There's no accountability when you're just raised with your mom. It's funny. Me and my wife were just having this conversation yesterday. We were just talking about it, Pat. There's no accountability. Because there's nobody keeping you in check. The mother just wants to nurture, oh, you're okay, what happened to you? You got scraped, let me help you. The dad's like, nah, you got to quit that bullshit real fast. You got to get your ass
I
to
can
work.
see Angie, your mom, having an easy time raising you and Alejandro. You guys look like you guys were two sweet little boys. You listened, you didn't break the rules.
Mom, I'm in jail again. Can you come get me?
That's exactly what happened.
No, hijo, no, not this time.
Yeah, no, it's you have no accountability. You have nobody to answer to. And the natural order, I think a lot of people don't realize that the natural order of life is, you know, as God, we answered the man. A man that doesn't answer or is not accountable to God has nothing to live for because he has nothing to base his life on. So the natural order is God, the head of the household, and the wife, and then the kids. And when you disrupt that natural order of life, you're done. There's no way you're going to have a healthy life if you continue to live that way. So to me, it's like, yeah, of course it makes sense that single fathers are raising better kids than single mothers. Mm-hmm. Not because moms suck at it, it's because the dad needs to be there to have an accountability over that child. Mm-hmm. The fact that I got in trouble so much was because my dad was not there. My dad's not a deadbeat, he was around, but my dad, I just felt like I get away with more because dad was not there to tell me, hey, you can or you can't do this or whoop my ass like he did when I was around them all the time. It kept me in check. So yeah, it makes total sense. You know?
I would also just add to this, because I agree with everything you guys have been saying, and I think it's very true that one of the things that disincentivizes men from wanting to get married is kind of these artificial legal liabilities that are.
Matt, you dealt with this, Matt.
Exactly.
So there's no question.
And I had
about
custody
that.
of kids.
But there's also there's other aspects to it as well, and I would, because I'm obsessed with politics, so this is what I focus on. But there's also aspects where direct government policies have disincentivized families, and not just the fact that for years, like say the rise of the welfare state, for years they were straight up cutting you a check if you had kids without a dad in the household.
LBJ, right? Society Act.
And this is just like, you know, and this is just basic economics 101, that if you incentivize a behavior, you will get more of it than you otherwise would have. That's just the way things work. On top of that, the policies of sucking kids into this college trap and artificially bidding up the prices of college, which is all loans backed by the government, guaranteed by the government. You know, if some 18-year-old kid here who has some 18-year-old who has no income and no assets and no work history walked in and said, I want a loan for $200,000 to start a business, you will get laughed out of the bank. It would be like, there is no chance that you could find a bank to give you that loan. But if you go in there and say, I want it for college, boom, rubber stamps, here you go. No problem sending you into debt. It's the most vicious type of debt. It's worse than credit card debt. They can garner your wages over it.
You can't file bankruptcy to get rid of it.
Then at the same time, we've had policies such as artificially low interest rates, the Federal Reserve buying mortgage-backed securities on a regular basis that have bid up the price of housing. So you have these guys, you know, it's like these 25-year-olds who come out of college. They kind of did what all the adults around them were telling them is the right thing to do. They're 150 grand in debt. The average price of a home is like $800,000, and the kid works at Starbucks. And he's like, well, how the hell am I ever going to get married and like provide for a wife and a family? And to be fair, this is part of the reason why so many of those kids start demanding socialism. And I kind of, as much as that's not the direction we want to go in, you kind of understand where the corruption in the system has failed so much that they're like, well, this is impossible. Like, how could I ever get out of that? And they've also probably been on, crazy psychiatric drugs
I
for most
also,
of their life.
think there's one other issue, especially among younger people, and that's hookup culture. And I, quite frankly, have been a good benefactor of some of this hookup culture. But women now
what's your
view
OnlyFans
themselves. Women now view themselves as, if the guys can do it, I can do it. And I think we can all agree there's a big difference between a guy sleeping with a bunch of women versus a woman sleeping with a bunch of men. And that is pervasive amongst women. And it's sort of ruining women's asset, right, in the marketplace. And it's
Asset value. That's right.
asset value
That's right.
with that ASSET. All right, but men and women are not equal in that regard. You caught me on that one.
It makes sense why he's single, by the way. It totally makes sense.
But I'm a man with options. That's the difference, y'all.
Is there any signs you get of the desire to one day get married? Yes or no? Any signs? Like, give me this much of a sign. Yes or no? Adam, no signs here. It's just
No signs?
I've been the benefactor of part of the hookup culture myself, Mr. Tinder, swipe right, elite Yelper.
No dating apps.
All
Real
right, so let me
in-line
go to the
person.
next
That's
one.
another thing.
By the way, let me go to the next one until
Yes,
you
sir.
keep hooking up with these stories. Okay, all right, so next one here. All right, Americans are moving to Japan, okay? For its safety and affordability. Insider story. By the way, can you guys imagine Ricky living in Japan?
Yeah.
Right? What would happen? What's your name? The
Sumo wrestling, maybe.
The number of Americans relocating to Japan has seen a steady rise, with 6,642 individuals making a move in 2022. The population of American expats in Japan has reached 60,804, a significant increase of 57,000 in 2020, according to the country's Ministry of Justice.
Wow.
Safety is a primary motivator for Americans choosing Japan as their new home. As Veronica Hansen, who moved to Japan with her family, explains, my children had to do active shooter drills. I just exploded and said, we don't have to stay here. Let's go. The country's reputation for safety and minimal presence of gun violence provides a sense of security. Affordability is another key factor driving the migration. Alex Evans, who moved to rural Mukaishima Island, emphasizes the cost advantages, saying, for a 3-bedroom house, I pay $65,000 yen, which is the same as $463 a month.
Nice.
If I were in Hiroshima, my rent would be more expensive. So, any consideration of wanting to move to Japan? Ricky, I'll go to you first.
I have what I would want to see, Pat? How many of those are Japanese Americans versus just Americans?
So keep in mind, this is an insider story.
Right.
Insider story is typically leaning left. So the story they're trying to say, I don't know if you caught two or three comments they made.
I totally caught
gun,
it. Yeah.
training, and I have to be careful with this and be careful with that. So all this stuff about America, this is why I want to go over there.
Yeah, I think it's, look, here's the reality behind things. I love Mexico. When we go, me and Erica, we have property in Mexico, we have family in Mexico. I love Mexico, and Mexico's, when it comes out to gun violence, is a lot more dangerous than America is, right? Because a lot of people don't know that you can't, it's not legal to carry guns in Mexico. But yet all the criminals in Mexico have the guns, and many times in gunfights, they outdo the military in Mexico. But I would still not want to move to Mexico, though it's supposedly, that's home or whatever it is. It's the motherland, but I wouldn't want to go back.
How come? Safety?
No, it's just because this is like, okay, good. You could live in Japan for $400 a month. Where's your life gonna go? What legacy you're gonna leave behind? Like, how many people are building businesses over there? You can say, wow, look what they left for their kids. Like, I'm looking at Pat right now. We went to his house to go have dinner earlier. By the way, incredible dinner, Pat. I don't even know what Saturday at the beginning. It was just like a bunch of green stuff. I'm like, fuck it, I'm just gonna eat it,
Some meatballs.
And then I just saw meatballs. I'm like, I'm going for that immediately. But it was, so anyway. So I'm like, Pat has a couple, guys, security guards here. He lives in a good neighborhood. You have to say like his guards are there's people in his gate before you go in. They're armed. There's people going around 24 hours. Like, bro, why don't you just build a business and go live in a safer neighborhood? Like, I don't have to worry about that happening in my neighborhood. I live in a gated neighborhood, it's 24-hour security. I don't ever think about, or my nephew's gonna get killed by gun violence. That it's just, you might, the only place I would have to worry about that is where I grew up at East Bakersfield, where that makes sense. But why don't you go, instead of running away from building something big, why don't you stay where you're at, build something big, and get out of the neighborhoods that potentially can have those things happen? Because like this whole shooting, oh, there's guns everywhere, that's a bunch of bullshit. It's not true. Yeah, we have a lot of guns everywhere, but they also don't tell you how many times guns have prevented mass murders and how they protected families. You go to Japan, yeah, cool, bro. They don't, nobody has guns, but the government can turn on you whenever you want. Like, it's so crazy to think that giving the government that much power over you, and some people literally want to do that, that's excruciating to my brain to think that you will only want the government to have power over who controls the guns. Every time that's worked out, every time that's happened, it's never worked out good for the population. So no, I wouldn't move. I don't care. I don't care if gun violence went up by 100% in America. I still wouldn't move, because I could still move to a safer neighborhood, and I could have security like you do, and that's it. That's well, does it have to really resort to? Yeah, bro. We're humans. That's what it has to be resort to. People have been killing each other. Do you guys forget the first murder in human history was Cain and Abel? It was one brother killing the other. You're never gonna run away from this shit. Like, come on, get real, bro. Like, people are gonna kill each other no matter where you go.
So for a second there, I thought Adam killed Eve. I was like,
No.
I gotta reread.
I'm sure he thought about it.
I gotta reread that story.
I'm sure he thought, like
I
think
don't
about
remember
this.
that.
Came in
Dave, and if you think
Don't
about
give this guy any ideas,
Yeah,
bro.
Dave,
My name's Adam. I can't
know.
have that on my
But
record.
Dave, think about this. The first murder in human history were God's grandchildren, literally. They were like, it's like Adam and Eve, thank God. That was grandpa. His grandkids killed each other. And you think that you're going to run away from this when this is part of our DNA, no matter where you go in the world. Sometimes you guys forget that Japan went to China and threw the babies up in the sky and would catch them with bayonets with the knives and their guns. Like, you don't know your history if you think Japan is so peaceful. I also have a very bad history when it comes down to that. They went into China, threw them up in the air, and would catch them with the knife of their bayonets. Read your history book, see if you still want to move to Japan.
Yeah, my father was born during World War II, and he was 2 years old, and was taught during World War II by my aunt, his older sister, how to play dead in the streets in Manila, because the Japanese go through the city and bayonet everything.
Bayonet
They find
everything.
them
Am I
yeah.
lying?
Yeah.
The
Throw the babies
Japanese,
up
the
and catch them with
Japanese Empire
bayonets.
was absolutely vicious, one of the most ruthless militaries
Oh, for
ever.
sure.
They have been a lot cooler since then, but they were pretty bad. They were pretty bad for a while, just for the record.
So during my time in the Marine Corps, I got stationed there for a year. So I lived in Japan for a year on Okinawa. And I can tell you this about Japanese people. They're very disciplined.
Yeah.
They're very kind people. They love their family. I mean, if you talk about safety and security and education, by the way, you see the way Japanese teach the kids how much further advanced they are in terms of intellect and understanding subject matters. They're way out there. So, you know, if you're looking at a safe country to go to where your money can go, I mean, people leave all the time to come to America.
Yep.
We're facing a time right now, people are leaving America. I can't tell you how many times in our office, we do BOMs on a weekly basis, twice a week in our offices. I can tell you how many times people are saying, you know what, let me go to Panama, let me go to Belize, let me go to Japan, Singapore. Let me leave America, because the product of America isn't as shiny and strong and as attractive as it once used to be. And it hurts me because I'm a patriot, I've served this country, and I love our home. But people aren't thinking about, I got a guy DMing me right now because he's not wanting to leave Thailand. He's in Pattaya Beach, Thailand. He loves Thailand. And when you're looking at these stats, when you're looking at other countries making themselves attractive to Americans, yeah, what do you say, Patrick? If you don't take care of your people, somebody else will.
Somebody else will.
I'll say one thing. I love America. Like,
Amen.
I mean, I love this country. Born and raised in this country. My great grandparents fled the Bolshevik Revolution. Grandparents fled Nazi Germany. Like, I love America. I'm so thankful that I'm born in America. What did Jamie Dimon say about America recently? Like, we were dealt an amazing hand. We have peaceful neighbors on the north, Canada, Mexico, besides Ricky. And then we have the Atlantic Ocean, and we have the Pacific Ocean. We have capitalism. We have free markets. It's an amazing situation that we have here. And rather than cut and run and move to a different country, that's what I think is so amazing about what we do here, having these conversations. How can we improve our country? We are still the greatest country on earth, okay, by far. And it's incumbent on all of us to have these types of conversations. What can we do to improve? Because the politicians on both sides are fucking it up. Their approval ratings are in the dustbin. And it's, I think that's what's so powerful about what we do here. So let's figure this thing out.
Yeah, you know, I'm part of stories like this. When you read it, you know, you have no idea how many of these guys moved there because of COVID, because of school, and because of education, because of families, because of military, because of a job opportunity, because of, you know, one of the, when you were in the Army, people wanted to go to Japan to be English teachers and school teachers. It was an easy job to have, and you're right next to Okinawa. It was a good base. It was a great place to find a wife. It's lesser of a hookup culture, so maybe not good for you. But Japan.
But Pat, you've said something that I just want to bring up.
Yeah.
You know,
don't get upset. I'm sure there's some hooking up going on there. I know you don't want to get upset about it, but.
Thick skin. You've given the restaurant analogy about America.
Yes.
And that still rings true. And you've also brought up the #1 concern for a mother, parents, but mothers specifically, is their children's safety.
For sure.
Like if your kids are not safe, you're going to move. Move
Sheena talks about
neighborhoods
it all
like
the
Ricky's
time.
talking about,
Yeah.
move countries. The restaurant analogy, I think, is still very, very good analogy that you use about America. I don't know if you want to explain that right now.
America's got a waiting room of people wanting to come here, leading the world with 41 million immigrants that are here. There's no such thing as the Russian dream or the, you know, Japanese dream or the Chinese dream. There's only the American dream, and that's going to be there. But the part about that is we have to do our part to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know, Yankees, they haven't won a, you know, what do you call it, World
Championship?
Series since when? 2009,
Well,
right?
they just got a new owner.
Hell
So
yeah.
give them a
Good news for that part. But you think about it,
Pat Steinbrenner over here.
you think about it, in any place you're in, for you to be arrogant to think it's going to be like this forever, you're a fool.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you and I were having this conversation together about, you know, I think there's 3 communities that are ruining America today. And we've been talking about this a lot, and I keep saying it over and over and over again. The 3 communities are the tolerant Christians, that they're sitting around saying, well, it's okay, let them do it. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. No, it's not okay. That's not how it's supposed to be. It's the lazy and scared Republicans or conservatives that they're not putting their money where their mouth is. You're complaining about what's going on. And look at the mainstream media. Look how much control they got. Look at what these guys are doing at Washington Post and at Time Magazine and at this, that. You got plenty of money. Why don't you go buy them out? These guys are buying them. You're not
they're
buying
buying
them.
everything.
So then just be quiet or compete. Get in the damn arena, build a media company or buy a media company or buy a newspaper, do something about it. If you're not, sit the you-know-what down and don't say anything, especially with all that money in your bank account. Because the others, if there's one thing I got from Anthony Weiner today, is the following. Forget about where he's at. Everything about him was, well, that's a good strategy. Well, that's a good strategy. Well, that's what worked, and this is what worked. He was only thinking about strategy. It wasn't like, you know, well, that's exactly what we're going to do to win over here, and then we have to go get this person and that person. If we get this person, it was so much about strategy where the right is like, look, man, we belong to this country club. We're good with this, with that. We don't need to do all the other stuff. And then the last one is with my friend here, the libertarian everybody wants to see run for office, Dave Smith, is to do your thing libertarians. They're also part of the problem. Because there's too much of sitting there saying, listen, as long as you leave me alone and you let me do what I'm doing, I'm good. The problem is, they're not leaving you alone. They're going around you to go to your kids. I asked a question today from Anthony Weiner. It was one of the most uncomfortable questions to him. I don't know, did anybody watch the entire podcast or no? Who watched the whole thing? Did anybody watch it beginning to the end? Jorge, I know you did. Do you want to repeat what I asked him? Because this is my family here, but I think if you say it, it's okay. With a straight look on my face, I look at Anthony Weiner, and can you pull up that article first before I ask this question? You know which one I'm talking about, by Timon.com. Go to the word queer and pull it up. And ask him this question. He got so uncomfortable. George, you ready for this question? It's a very uncomfortable question.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable.
Because if I ask you this question, you would be like, what the hell is the matter with him? So, Adam, what question did I ask him?
I believe you asked him when you were 10 or 12 years old, were people teaching you how to...
No,
that's not what I asked him. I asked him right there.
I can say it if you want. I don't care.
Go ahead, say it.
You're telling we were having dinner. You said, are you any good at doing blowjobs? And he looked at you, I guess, kind of offended and confused. Yeah, are you any good at doing blowjobs? He's like, what? He says, so if it made you uncomfortable, so why would you be asking 10-year-old kids or teaching 10-year-old kids through these books how to do blowjobs?
That was a question I asked him.
Dang.
I said, do you and I need to learn how to give blowjobs? He looks at me like there's something wrong with it. I said, notice how uncomfortable you got? Imagine how uncomfortable it is for mothers to say, keep those books out of my kids' faces. Go to this book here right now, Queer, that keep going down. This is what kids are reading right now in many parts of the country. Keep going up, keep going up, keep going up. Keep going up, keep going up, keep going up, right there. Boom, go up a little bit. Hey, hello. Hello, here's how you do it. Go a little bit up, go a little bit up, go a little bit up. Boys with boys right there. Fantastic, boys. Here's how you do it. This is what happens. Yeah, so this is, and by the way, to be fair, even when I asked him, I said, would you want your kids? He says, no, I wouldn't want my 11-year-old. He's not even in it. And his immediate reaction is going to be what? No, that doesn't make any sense for this to happen. So again, but this, when we went to school, this is weird. Some of you guys right now are uncomfortable, the fact that I'm even bringing up these words, right? But because of tolerant Christians, because of lazy and scared Republicans, conservative, and because of do your thing libertarians, we're here. So if we think America is going to be the greatest country forever, you are naive, you're a fool. But if we realize, like, for it to stay the greatest country, like, for example, I watched this documentary, the only documentary I've seen Dylan cry, only one. He's watched a lot of documentaries. The only one that got him emotional, where, babe, you'll remember this. We were in, where were we at when he watched this? Was it Bermuda? I think we were in Bermuda. So every day he needs to, whatever hour he watches of a documentary, he gets to play 30 minutes of iPad while it's vacation time throughout the weekday. Weekends, they get 2 hours of iPad. Weekday, they have to watch per hour of documentary. You get 30 minutes of playing iPad. So anyways, we're in Bermuda. I said, I want you to watch this documentary. This is a day before the announcement of Yankees has happened, and so I'm getting him to watch all the documentaries on the Yankees, so I need him to understand what's happening with the Yankees. And he watches this documentary of Yogi Berra, okay? He watches this thing. What was it called, babe? What was the name of it? Can you pull it up, Yogi Berra documentary? He comes, it ain't over. Oh, guys, you have to watch this. He comes up to me. His eyes are filled with tears. He says, Daddy, this was the best documentary ever. I said, Dilly. I said, why? I said, it's the best documentary ever. So now I haven't seen the documentary. So I come back and I watch the documentary. I'm upstairs. Jen's in the room. I'm like trying to hide away from Jen because I'm getting choked up like multiple times. Like, what the hell is wrong with this documentary? It's so emotional with the family, relationship, all this stuff. But you know what the whole thing was about? There is pride about Yogi won as a champion, then he won as a coach, and he was so proud of representing the jersey that when Steinbrenner fired him, he says, I will never come back in the stadium ever again. And the first time him and Don Larson, I believe, that threw a perfect game. I think I'm saying the name right. Don Larson threw a perfect game. Did he throw a perfect game? He threw a perfect game, and Yogi caught the perfect game. The day he and Don Larson come to the game for the very first time, do you know who threw a perfect game that night? David Cohen. So the first time, I think it's David Cohen, the first time he doesn't come to the stadium for 20 plus years, wow. Him and the guy who were the last guys to throw a perfect game coming, that night there's a perfect game. He's like, after the sixth. Can you imagine how emotional that is? You're like, what are the chances of this, right?
It's like, you wouldn't be able to put it in a movie script.
Dude, you wouldn't be able to put this in a movie when I'm watching this.
Like the odds of this
insane odds, right, for this to happen.
There might be one perfect game for the whole season for all the teams.
I remember when Kenny Rogers threw a perfect game with the Texas Rangers. I was a diehard Rangers fan. But the point is, you're watching this, you're like, dude, you got to be proud. If you played for the Yankees, you coached for the Yankees, you got to be proud of the Yankees, right? If you were having any of the benefits of this great country called America, and this thing in one way or another changed your life, you are a coward if you don't do the fighting now. This is why I say those three communities have to understand, if you don't do your part, guess what? Very soon, I would never move to Japan. What makes you think you won't move to Japan? My family moved here from Iran. I would never move to Japan. We are naive to think we will never one day move to Japan. If America is no longer what America once was, guys, all of us may be moving somewhere. So this is the whole reason why we, did what we did when we saved America by bringing back the free enterprise system and hope to American families, because this is a fight worth fighting, and it's going to require everybody. And those who sit on the sidelines, all of a sudden are going to hurt this thing, this great idea that they came up with in 1776 that changed our lives. That's my only argument. We have to do our part. If we don't, this could one day be a shit show.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
People, what's some tangible things that people are watching? So, well, Patrick, I don't have a podcast. And I remember in Bahamas, there's a guy that approached you in the Bahamas, and you called him out because he wants to be on this podcast to pitch his message and to pitch his product. And he said, why don't you start your own podcast? And he said, well, I don't want to lose clients. I don't want to lose business. He was there with 100 of his people. And you said, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
And so what can people really tangibly do to stand their ground and build America up to that promise where we can?
Dave said
fight
something
back?
very interesting. Dave says one day he's watching the DNC and the RNC. I think he's watching the RNC, and Ron Paul speaks. And Ron Paul speaks about the Fed. He had a book at the time, End the Fed or something like that, right? He says, I watched this guy out of everybody I related to him. He says, I came back, I watched his material, I read his book, then I read all his books, then I read all the books that he recommends to read, then I watched Milton Friedman, then I watched Ayn Rand, and the next thing you know, I can't get the stuff out of my head, right? So the lowest thing somebody can do to start off with, when I first met Ricky and I sat down. I said, Ricky, do me a favor. Tonight, before you go to sleep, watch this Milton Friedman 45-minute interview. Was with Phil Donahue, I believe, right? Do you know from that moment on, Ricky goes away on his own. We don't have a follow-up conversation. The next time I saw Ricky on stage, he delivers a 20-minute message, 15-minute message, and I'm like, what the hell happened to this guy? He says, Pat, that one video, I got obsessed, and I just watched everything. And then I realized all the mistakes my parents made, Jorge Ramos, people in my community, and now Ricky is baptizing other people, and he's getting other people thinking. So step number one is for you to actually want to go through the journey. What would you say?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, I think that don't ever underestimate how powerful telling the truth is. It's an unbelievable powerful thing to like stand up and tell the truth. And it's an unbelievably damaging thing to bite your tongue when you know what the truth is. And I think that's the point you were getting at. I listened to that podcast the other day where you're talking about, like, kind of particularly for people who are like wealthy and are in a position. Look, you can't count on the guy who's like making 60 grand a year to risk his livelihood.
No.
You know what I mean? But if you're a guy with like millions in the bank, then like there's a little bit more of an onus on you.
More
to like
responsibility,
you can step up, you can take the arrows. You know what I mean?
Great
Like
point.
you're already protected to some degree.
So why
But-
did you respond to his podcast? You react to him on July 4th. During the night, that's what you did a podcast, or you recorded that podcast? Reaction to his point?
the thing that we are talking about, the point of these three groups who have kind of like allowed this problem to happen.
Oh no, you and I talked about it. I think you were reacting to McGregor. Was it when?
Yes.
Douglas,
No, that was
Colonel
Colonel Douglas McGregor. That was a great podcast as well. But just to respond to that, because I am a libertarian and one of kind of the more prominent libertarian people out there. That I did a segment on my podcast about this. That I think you're absolutely right, and I think that like essentially I'm a libertarian, and to me what that means is that I believe people have natural rights. Like, I believe people have natural rights and that it's immoral to violate their rights. And among these rights, the right to life, liberty, property, essentially what it is the idea of the non-aggression principle. That violence is legitimate in self-defense, but it's not legitimate to initiate violence against peaceful people. And I also happen to recognize that free market capitalism leads to the most prosperous societies. We have lots of good empirical evidence on this. Look at East Germany versus West Germany, North Korea versus South Korea. These are places that shared the exact same culture, the same genetics, the same everything. The only thing that was different were their economic systems, and one produces starvation and the other produces enormous wealth. It's okay. So because now what a lot of libertarians kind of got in the tendency of doing was because you have the right to do what you want to do and you have the right to do what you want to do, therefore I shouldn't care about what you're doing. I shouldn't care what you're doing with your freedom. But that doesn't actually logically follow. Like, it's also well within my rights to object to what you're doing, to be intolerant of what you're doing. And there has to be a certain point. Like, tolerance is good to a certain degree. You know, if there's somebody in this room who's a Christian and there's somebody in this room who's a Muslim and there's someone who's an atheist, it's good that we all respect, hey, you have a right to that view, I respect that. You don't force your view on me, I don't force your view, my view on you. But you get to a certain point where we're literally talking about introducing blowjob instructions to children. And you're like, no, like there can be no tolerance of this. And the fact that it's gotten to this point demonstrates we have been way too tolerant. Like the idea that we were not up in arms well before this was even introduced into schools. Like, first off, I would argue that that's an act of aggression. Like, that's children. This is an act of
It's like a
aggression
hostile
on children.
takeover.
Yes. But just aside from that, you realize that it's like there. So where exactly is the point when we need to not be tolerant anymore? I don't know. But I'd venture to say it's several steps before teaching blowjobs to children. You know what I mean? Like several steps before that is where we need to be like, no.
I have a question for you, Dave. Okay, I have a question for you though.
Sure.
Let me give you the flip side of it. Okay.
A child giving you a blowjob. I'm sorry, was that inappropriate? I'm a dirty comedian from New York. That is the reverse.
No. Let me give you the flip side of it. How about all these people? There's only one party pushing this bullshit, okay? And that's a fact. That's a fact.
Well,
Okay?
there's one party pushing it, and there's one party being completely complicit
Hold
and
on.
allowing them to push
No,
it.
I agree with you. But here's my point. My point is this. There's only one party pushing it. Not the other party's not fighting it, but one party's pushing it, okay? What about the people that keep voting for that party that keeps doing that bullshit? What responsibility do they have? You call yourself a Christian, you call yourself, you say that you believe in God, that you're a person of faith, but your party not only owned slaves, not only supported Jim Crow, not only supported the KKK, not only voted for LBJ that said, I'm gonna have these ends voting Democrat for 200 years, not only fought the civil rights, not only did all of that, okay, it's the same party that's pushing this bullshit. How much responsibility should people take for voting for the same party that keeps pushing this bullshit? They have 200 years of bullshit. Like, so at what point, okay, I get you, I have to fight these people off. I'm good fighting people that knowingly want to do it, that knowingly want to teach these kids this bullshit. I have a problem with also fighting people that are so goddamn stuck in their fucking ways, excuse my language, that you are still voting for these people. I don't mind fighting my real enemies. I hate fighting blind enemies. The ones that I can't see, that you call yourself a Christian, a head of a household, that you call yourself a leader. But you cannot even fathom the idea that what your auntie and your granny and your mommy taught you is complete fucking bullshit. At what point do I have to fight them too? Why can't they wake up? Why can't they do their homework? Why can't they see what they've been doing? Why do I have to take responsibility for them as well? That's the problem that I have. So I'm good, again, show me. You know what I asked God for one thing, Dave. I asked God for one thing. Protect me from my friends. I can handle my enemies.
Yeah. No, listen, I get your point, and look.
So I can't take responsibility for that, bro.
Well,
I fight. By the way, I live in California. I don't mean to interrupt you. Sure. I'm staying in California, and you know when I get asked why? Because I'm gonna keep fighting that bullshit. I'll pay the 50% tax so I can fight. I'm not fucking running.
Well,
I'm staying right there, bro. I'm gonna take this shit I'm gonna die with this. I'm gonna take this all the way to the ground. So, but why do I gotta fight people that call themselves Christians or Catholics or whatever religion and keep voting for the same party doing this bullshit? It's obvious who's doing it at this point. Like, why are you still my enemy too? Like, bro, these are people you're voting for. You know what's funny? I will tell you this, and I'll end with this, David, and I'll finish with this. Babe, what did I tell you about RFK? He's the only one that I'll ever do what? Remember I told you? I said, the RFK is the only Democrat I can see myself ever voting for. I'm even willing to switch for RFK. I am not stuck so much in the conservative Republican Party. Because I see this man, I'm like, dude, this guy's solid. You know how many Democrats can't do that the other way, even though they're so willing to go down the rabbit hole with this bullshit, bro?
There's a reason for that. I think, Dave, you ought to break it down from the standpoint. So I have Fernando Lasso over on my place. He's from Ecuador.
The singer?
The famous singer, yes, Fernando Lasso. So he's at the house. He was my groomsman at my wedding, and one of the greatest pranks I pulled in my life was on Fernando. Hands down, it's got to be a top 10 greatest prank. It's incredible. If after we're done, I'll tell you guys a story. It's a great prank. Anyway, so he starts talking about Correa. Correa is the guy that's going to be coming back to run against the guy that they have right now, who's a conservative. Correa was the one that's like a Castro type of a figure. He's coming back, and he's probably going to end up winning the election next 2 months. He's super worried. He has no idea what to do. Am I going to leave? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? And he starts saying, well, I've always been a Democrat, but I'm starting to think I'm a Republican, and I don't know what I am, and He's kind of going back and forth. I said, Lasso, you know, it's no longer about being a Democrat or a Republican, because what you just said has nothing to do with Democrat and Republican. And you will take it from here, I'll give it to you, it's more from establishment to anti-establishment. For example, Anthony Weiner is a Democrat, but he's an establishment Democrat with Hillary Clinton because she's full-blown establishment. But also the Bushes are
Of course,
establishment.
100%.
McConnell,
100%.
establishment. So you can go and give a lot of Republicans that are part of the establishment. The people you have to look at are the anti-establishment candidates.
Of
Okay,
course.
now here's a problem with the anti-establishment candidates. The anti-establishment candidates typically get assassinated or they
Yep.
get eliminated. So if you look at
don't get
anti-establishment,
funded.
so you got Andrew Jackson, the first ever anti-establishment guy is Andrew Jackson. We can talk about our founding fathers going against what they
Abraham
did
Lincoln.
against
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln, but Andrew Jackson. Okay, then you got Abraham Lincoln assassinated. Okay,
JFK.
John F. Kennedy, anti-establishment. They wanted to shut down CIA. They wanted to shut down the Fed. Everything anti-establishment. Ronald Reagan, somewhat anti-establishment. Some could even say that Reagan was 50% establishment, 50% anti-establishment. Then from there, at first, people thought Obama was anti-establishment, but he ended up being, establishment. Bill Clinton, well, maybe this guy's anti-establishment. Nope, he was establishment. Trump, anti-establishment. What did he want to do to Trump? So now, today, a clip with RFK comes out and everybody's trying to bash him, trash him. Today he's trying to defend himself, saying, hey, what are you guys doing to all this stuff that I'm doing? So the only reason you're saying I'm willing to vote for a Democrat, you're not willing to vote for a Democrat. Ricky, you respect those that are anti-establishment.
Right.
So it's no longer I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. I'm an anti-establishment person because I want to make the decision of what's best for my family.
Right.
I don't need you to make all the decision of what's best for my family. That's the RFK part. What would you add to that?
Yeah, well, like, I think to your point about, like, people being responsible for who they vote for, I mean, look, I can't argue that there's, yeah, to some degree, people are responsible for who they vote for. And if you vote for somebody who's really awful, particularly if they've already been enacting these horrible policies, and then you continue to support that person or that party, there's definitely some responsibility that falls on you for that. I do tend to focus more of my outrage toward the powerful people who are intentionally inflicting this on Americans and have a little bit more sympathy for, look, the fact is that there's just been, like, it's not as if Democratic voters just say woke up one morning and decided to think it was a good idea to force the vaccine on everybody in the country. There was a massive propaganda campaign where they were really fooled. I mean, like, they genuinely believed they were listening to the expert science class. And look, man in a suit on CNN told me that this doctor is giving me all of the right information. Now, do they have some level of responsibility for that? Sure, absolutely. But I also think that there is, look, watch what happened with Donald Trump. The way Donald Trump just almost, look, for people who are at least our age, for younger people maybe not recognize this as much, the way he snapped the Republican base out of, you have to support every foreign war. Like, they were, I mean, if you talked to your average Republican voter in 2007, and you said, like, oh, I don't think we should have fought the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, I don't think we should be fighting any of these wars, they were like, what are you, some type of loon? What are you, some left-wing hippie? Everybody knows that we had to go fight these wars and we had to do this because we love our country. And in 1 second, Donald Trump gave all of them permission to just be like, no, you don't have to believe that. Hey, you were lied to. And they went, oh, you know what? We were kind of lied to about that. And I give Ron Paul a lot of credit for this, too. I think Ron Paul standing up there and saying this in 2008 and 2012 led the way for Donald Trump to come out and say it. And I think, in a way, look, RFK is polling consistently at about 20% within the Democratic base. And he represents a complete repudiation of everything Biden stands for. I mean, Biden's biggest policies were the vax mandate and this crazy war in Ukraine. And RFK is like, yep, completely against both of those.
I agree with you, but here's the thing, though. If JFK was alive right now, would he be a Democrat?
Well,
it's a serious question.
Well, I know, but it's impossible to know for sure.
No, but
I think
according, he has a picture with the gun. He was anti-establishment.
The party has definitely changed. The party is not in the same place that it was.
What I'm getting at is that it's always one party that has the most of this bullshit going on, and that's just a fact.
No,
I agree with
listen.
what you're saying.
No, well, I'll give you pushback on that because I'll tell you that, look, immediately in the aftermath of 9/11, the Republicans were absolutely horrible on a national level. I mean, the George W. Bush administration.
I'm talking about, like, for the schools. Let's not get away from the subject. The schools.
Yes,
no,
but
we're talking about not on a federal level. We're talking about on a local level.
I know, but let me just hear
the reason why Dave jumped in. You said the one side has always been on the wrong side.
No, I said they've always pushed a lot of this bullshit.
Yeah,
Well,
but
yes,
the
but
other side-
I agree that their side's
I'm
wrong.
making the
Right.
point that there's evolution with these parties, right? So at the time, while George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were instituting torture, they were pushing us into disastrous wars. It was actually the Democrats who were saying things like, which Obama was saying, which part of the reason why he got elected, even though he didn't follow through on any of it, that we should repeal the Patriot Act, we should close Guantanamo Bay, we shouldn't get involved in all these stupid wars. This was a message that was very appealing to a lot of voters.
But it was all a lie.
including- Well, whether
It
it was
turned out- it had
whether
turned
it
to
was
be
a
a lie.
lie or whether he
Because
just
they were spying on their opposition.
Yeah,
And we know this
No,
already.
no, no.
as a
Well, this
fact.
is now you're fast forwarding to 2016. But whether it was a lie or whether Obama got rolled by powerful interests, I don't know for sure. But either way, he didn't govern that way. I'm just making the point that the parties kind of flipped on this issue of war, and now the Democrats are much more of the war hawk party than they were back in the wake of September 11th. And so. One of the things that's fascinating about RFK, and I think one of the reasons why a lot of people get upset when he's got some of his bad liberal positions, like he's liberal on affirmative action or he's liberal on some of these other.
Yeah.
I'm almost like glad he has those because I don't want him to be a right winger. I want him to be the best liberal. I want somebody to try to bring the liberals back. And look, we can have contempt for the half of America that votes for the Democratic Party. But that is half of the voting base in America. And if we can't try to make them better, we're going to have a major problem in this country.
Good point. I want to add something before we move on to the next topic here. You said I'm going to stay in California till what? Till they burn it down or something like that?
I'll burn with California.
Okay, perfect. So you said that. All right. And you know, all the people that jump ship or whatever you said.
No, I
okay.
don't have anything against
But
them.
hear me out.
That's my goal.
But I totally get it. But hear me.
Some people, that's not their goal. That's my goal.
I don't think it really is your goal. I think you're saying it. It's a good motivational thing to say, but I don't believe that's how you're going to think when you have kids going through certain places.
That's
Hear
what
me
I'm
out.
saying right now.
Let me just say
Yeah,
this.
of course,
I
right
just
now.
want to give you the message for you
Yeah.
to be thinking about it. Process. You're a guy that knows how to reason, and we have some of the best conversations always together. That's why I love talking to you. When we go anywhere, you and I are always talking to each other.
Yep.
The best conversations. So here's how you have to process that. Why did you leave East Bakersfield?
Definitely, I need to get away from the bad neighborhoods. Definitely.
Why not? Why don't you ride or die in East Bakersfield?
No, I agree.
Okay,
Agree.
so did your dad make a good move leaving Mexico to go to Baco?
100%.
So he made the right choice as a
Yes.
father, right? Okay.
Yes.
Are you glad he made that choice?
100%.
How different would your life have been if you were gonna be staying in Michoacan, growing
I
up?
would,
and
I
you-
would probably be dead by now. According to the state, one of my cousins there, I'll be dead already.
So you have to know that the one thing that we don't know is, trust me, you know how many places I'm in right now?
Mm-hmm.
How many places do you think I'm in right now? Where am I at right now?
Here. No,
I'm in,
but you're
I'm
in
in
a million
five different places.
Of course.
No, I'm in 5 places. 5. Because my wife is here, so I don't have to worry about where she's at.
Right.
When she's not around, I'm in 6 places.
Of course.
But I'm in 5 places because I got my 4 other kids.
Right, right.
To see where they're at. When there was no wife and there was no kid, I'm in 1 place.
Of course.
And it's easy peasy.
Of
I ain't got to
course.
worry about it. I'm good to go. Life changes the
Mm-hmm.
moment that little kid you hold in your hand and it's looking at you crying and you're going to call it Ricky or whatever name you're going to give your son
Mm-hmm.
or your daughter, it's going to immediately change for you. All you're going to think about is what you can do to give the best life for this kid. Decisions change in a very big way when
Of
that
course.
takes place. So for me,
For now, though, this is where I'm at.
I would like for you to sign a lease of an office space as well, but that's a different conversation. So that was a personal shot.
I got 7 offices over there.
I
It's
get it, but I
PHP
need you to have your
sprinkled
own
in
as well.
PHP
Like everybody
over
else.
there.
No, I need you to have your own as well, but that's a different conversation. So going back to it.
I got 7, more than a lot of people.
PBD always
I'm
poking,
here.
man. He's always poking.
All I'm saying to you is this part, and then the other thing I want you to kind of be thinking about this. I want to go to you with this one. This is one that I've been thinking about a lot. Is Haas here or no? Is Haas here?
No.
Haas is not here. Okay. He didn't really not qualify. Are you guys being serious or no? Seriously? Is this a joke or is this serious? When was okay, cool. Well, Haas. So to me.
He's watching, Pat. He's watching.
I know he is. I'm a big Haas fan. He's an absolute stud. Him and his wife Naveen are incredible people. But this is one thing I want to say that's becoming very weird for me. What next thing I'm going through? So my parents, they got married, both Christians. One was a communist, the other one was a Republican. You know, the other one was an imperialist.
Imperialist, yeah.
They got divorced twice, but they were both Christians. Interesting, huh? So when people would ask me to say, what counsel can you give on marriage? I would say, if you can do double, which is what? Same faith, same political beliefs, you increase the chances. Of course, you got to have magic, enjoy each other's company, attracted to all the other stuff, but I'm just saying philosophically, okay? I can only imagine if Jen was a socialist. It would never, because
wouldn't work.
she wouldn't let me raise the boys the way I want to raise them.
Right.
The other day we were at dinner with Tom. Tom will remember this. We're at dinner to celebrate Kim's birthday, and we were, a very private conversation we were having. He knows exactly what it is. And in one of the moments, she's in tears. We have to make a very big decision in our life. It's not an easy one. It's a very hard one right now we're going through. And she just looks, and Tom says, what are you thinking about this whole thing? And she says, Tom, I trust my husband. I trust whatever he says, this is what we're going to be doing, because his decisions have been great with me, and I trust where he's going to take our family. Let me tell you, if she would have been any other way, I can't stay married. We've been married 14 years. I think we'll make it to 15, okay? We take it 1 year at a time. And this has been the message since the day we got married. We take it 1 year at a time with marriage. We don't have this, I will never, da, da, da. Stop it. Stop being so arrogant and acting like you're God that you can predict the future. The more it's about 1 year at a time, I believe, the more you're going to work into it, improve, and kind of feel like you have to do your part. But I have to earn that respect from my wife. Okay, so watch this. Here's what's been happening, which is kind of weird. So my community, we did a podcast one time. A guy, it was the first one or a second one. Guy was Muslim. What do you think about the Muslim community? How about us Muslim conservatives? And in your mind, you're like, well, shoot, you know, Muslim, you know, there's a da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, great, no problem. So let's go a little bit deeper. My dad, when my sister's getting married to Siamak, and his family wants to come because he wants to ask for, you know, her hand. My dad and I got into a massive argument. And he says, you're okay with your sister marrying a Muslim? Are you okay with your daughter marrying a Muslim? I said, Dad, I would be okay. I would be more okay with my sister marrying a Muslim where they share all the other common values than I am her marrying an Assyrian who disrespects her, doesn't treat her well, and they don't have the same values. Now, they got married. They did a Baha'i ceremony in the wedding, and they did a Christian ceremony in the wedding. Behind closed doors, it was World War III, but we acted very well. Okay? So there's politics in relationships and all that stuff. What's the moral of the story? I think there's something crazy going on right now. Can you imagine if conservative Muslims, Christians, Jews, Scientologists, Catholics, Jehovah, Seventh-day, LDS, atheists, Mormon, LDS, if these guys come together, they're like, look, man, who you believe in? I believe in L. Ron Hubbard. More power to you. Who you believe in? I believe in Jesus. Who you believe in? I believe in Abraham. I believe in this. Who you believe in? I believe in Virgin Mary. I believe, all good, man. I believe in Joseph Smith. Listen, to each his own. We can have that debate at a whole different time. But right now, do you believe they should keep these books out of schools?
There you go.
Check, I do. Do you believe we should get married and have kids after getting married and do that? Check. Do you believe we should? Check. Do you believe in these principles? Do you believe we need to stay strong in our country? Yeah. Do you believe? I do. Hey guys, can we just come together? Because do you know, crazy stat, 70% of Muslims vote Democrat. Did you know that? Let me say this one more time to you. 70% of Muslims vote Democrat. Why do they vote Democrat? You know why? One reason. One reason, because Republicans are known for being what? Pro-Israel. I know America is typically pro-Israel, but it's more on the Republican side, right? So why are what value of the the side of all this stuff, what values of those do you think Muslims agree with?
None.
None. So watch what happened in the last midterms. You ready? Crazy number. 2018 midterms. Only 17% of Muslims voted Republican. 2022 midterms, 28%. Muslims are up 11%.
There it is.
So watch what's going on right now. If we sit there and say, man, I've always had this animosity, or not even animosity, what's the word, stereotype or whatever. No, by the way, some of the stereotypes are right. We had, some of them are terrorists and Middle Easterns. Okay, fine. People joke with me. You don't typically hear about somebody saying that's a terrorist black guy. That kind of doesn't go together. It's mainly from one place. So we did this video measuring what are the top 5 angriest countries in the world. You know what number 1 was? Lebanon. Number 2 was Turkey. You know what number 3 was? Which makes all the sense in the world. Armenians, okay? So it's Lebanon. These are some pissed off people right now. Now it makes sense for a lot of people saying, no wonder Pat's pissed off. I'm Armenian, Dad. What do you want me to do?
And the Armenians were pissed off that they weren't number 1.
Turkey, because Turkey's right above them, right?
Ooh, especially that one.
But when you go look at the data, you're like, okay, some of the stereotype makes sense, but what if like all the people that kind of got conservative values that are not getting to 35, 38, 40 years old, got kids going to private school, you're like, now you're going to, what if we unite?
Yes.
You got the cross, all good dog. You got nothing, no problem. You got Dianetics, do your thing. You got the Quran, let's unite to defend our kids against this madness. By the way, if that happens, oh my God. Go ahead and say something to Muslims. And the Muslim's gonna say, go ahead and say something to my Christian brother, go ahead. Do you notice what happens now? The dynamics, there's a synergy going on. And once you bring synergy with the people that they have for decades wanted to keep divided, because the more divided we are, the more they can control us, the more we realize, listen, what do you think about all this stuff?
Yeah.
Like if this were to happen with these communities?
Well, I think you're really onto something. I also think to some degree it is happening, and it's not just like the numbers you mentioned with Muslims, but even if you look at, Trump in 2020 was way up with his share of the black vote, way up with his share of the Latino vote from his presidential election in 2016, and a lot of this stuff is just it's simply just the left overplaying their hand and pushing a lot of people away. Like, the idea that like, there's a lot of black people and Latinos who are like, yeah, I don't really like lockdowns and riots. Like, I don't really like that mixed with this crazy sexualization of children. Like that, you know what I mean? And what's interesting about this idea, right, is that, so the Democratic base is kind of like this random collection of different like minority groups who they all kind of push together. And this, you'll hear Democrats talk about this. They'll be, they'll say things like the disenfranchised people, or, something like that. They'll be like African Americans and Latinos, the LGBTQ community. And you're like, first, why are those all lumped together?
The cultural
like there is nothing in common in these communities. There's no reason. Like, I don't know if you've I grew up in Brooklyn. I kind of was around a diverse group of people. Like, go into the hood and start talking to black people about LGBTQ people, and tell me what kind of responses you get. You know what I'm saying? Like, it makes no sense. So they have this like kind of loose coalition, and it's all built around, well, they're the racist white people. They're oppressing you, and therefore you should all be voting this way because of that. But it's very loose. Like, there's nothing that really ties them together. Look, even LGBT, there's nothing that really ties them together.
No, they talk about totally different from the L
they
and the
talk
G and
about
the
it
B.
like it's a community. First off, they're not a community. They're not an organic community. They're amongst all of us. There's like gays and lesbians are not really any more together than like straights and gays are. In fact, you could argue they're polar opposites. You know what I mean? Like, transgender has nothing to do with being gay or lesbian.
No.
It's a completely different thing. So they kind of force all of these groups together, but it's just held on to by these kind of like vague lies about how there's this like oppressive racism that's out there. That
But
wants
Dave,
to
that
get
was my
you.
point that I was making earlier.
Yes, but
there's
my
only
point
one
is that,
party doing that.
well, yes, that. I agree with
Yeah,
you.
that.
There's
That's
one,
only
there's
one
one
party
party
doing that.
pushing the woke stuff, and there's another party that's impotent to kind of stand up against it. I agree with you on that. But what you're proposing here, Pat, is much more of like, actually, let's pull a lot of those groups together, but around something. Like around a common view, around a belief that like, hey, listen, we're opposed to this woke insanity. We don't want this being pushed on our children. We believe in free market capitalism. We believe in individual liberty. We don't believe in fighting wars all over the world while our own country is falling
Safety
apart.
protection of our families.
Yeah, like if we could just come together on those issues, I think that could be a very strong coalition. Also, I'd add in the fact that there are, what the RFK wing kind of represents, is that like there is this camp of good liberals who are waking up, or good leftists who are waking up, who didn't buy the woke stuff. That does exist. If you don't think so, like they all call them right wingers now. But people like Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore and RFK,
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan is a liberal. You know what I mean? They consider him like some
He was going to
far
vote for
right
Bernie.
winger.
Would you put Bill Maher in that camp?
Yeah, I
Classic
think
liberal.
he's somebody who's kind of in that camp, who's waking up to the insanity. But all of those guys, like we also got to find areas where we have agreement with them on. I'm not saying we're going to agree with them on everything, but you got to find areas of agreement. And that, I think there's a lot of potential in that. And by the way, we have no choice. We got to try to save this country. Like Pat was saying before, it's like, look, this is the greatest country in the history of the world. We're still the greatest country in the world, despite all the problems that we have right now. But that's not just because like we're on magical land or something like that.
What are we saving it from,
It's because, what are we saving it from?
Yeah.
Well, the enemies of liberty.
Who are the enemies of liberty?
Huh?
Who are the enemies of liberty?
Tyrants.
Who are the
And-
tyrants?
Well, you want like their last names?
No, I'm just like, who are they? How do I? No. The reason I ask this question is because the people that are watching, some of them are so oblivious that they don't know who's who. So like,
Well,
if you're okay, I'm new to this to this subject. Let's say I'm new to it. You and me are not new to it. I'm new to it. Who's the enemy? Who's the tyrant?
Well,
just define them.
Well, I mean, look, you can.
Like, you know, what is a woman? What is a tyrant?
Well, a tyrant is anybody who is violating people's individual liberty, and so right now there's no question that it's hard to even say Joe Biden. It's the people around Joe Biden who are pushing these insane policies. But look, you have what we've seen through COVID, what we've seen through the last 20 years of war. You have this unholy alliance between private interests and government power,
100%.
where you have the military-industrial complex. They have this entire system where weapons companies are funding think tanks that then lobby for wars based off lies,
Right.
which rake in hundreds of billions of dollars for those weapons companies. Same with pharmaceutical companies. Same with the entire banking complex, where you have this insane system where every freaking Treasury Secretary is a former Goldman Sachs employee, and then just happens to, pass policies that benefit all the banks that they're a part of.
You got Janet Yellen, the Fed Reserve, saying
So-
war will stimulate the economy.
Yeah.
Yes, war and abortion will stimulate the economy, according to Janet Yellen. So what needs to be done is there has to be an actual draining of the swamp. This is what Donald Trump promised, and this might rub some people the wrong way, but this is what he failed to deliver on. Okay? Now, at least he promised, at least he talked about it, but there's really no question that he did not deliver on that. The swamp still exists. The swamp swallowed up Donald Trump much more than Donald Trump ever drained the swamp. So what we need, I believe, is we need a mass awakening of as many American people as possible. That's why I think shows like this are so important. And what we need it's kind of like a three-pronged strategy, okay? Like we need a mass awakening of people. We need elites to get in the game. I'm talking about very wealthy people, very influential people. A good example of this is what Elon Musk just did with Twitter. Mm-hmm. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody, what did he buy it for? Was it
$44 billion.
Not everybody, if you asked me to come up with $44 billion, I'd need a few weeks. You know what I mean? Elon was able to come up with it pretty quick. I'd have to call a lot of friends.
If I can add to that,
but you need not anyone can do that. And then and the other strategy is going to have to be some type of political strategy. I'm a big fan of local political power,
There you go.
nullification on
There
a
you
local
go.
level.
Yeah.
Make sure you have, it's going to be tough to get the perfect president in there, but you could get a damn good sheriff in, a damn good city councilman,
Exactly.
take over your local school.
On a
So that's
local
what we can do
level, you
locally.
need to know
So
who
we can
has
support a
these-
local candidate.
I think that's
So what we can
important.
do.
Well, look,
Okay.
even DeSantis is an example of this, where, look, DeSantis really did something on a state level that really mattered.
Yeah.
Was the most important thing for your liberty in 2020 and 2021 was not what your president was doing. It was what your governor was doing.
Yep.
And that's true on local levels as well. But the other thing is that we're just going to need, it's got to be Donald Trump level of bravado, but with somebody who's actually read a book about something once and knows what they're talking about. Sorry if I alienated some of the Trump fans here.
about to get a
but Donald
tomato.
Trump has seen a show about a lot of things, but he hasn't read a book about a lot of things. And that's why he gave us Anthony Fauci for all of 2020. Because he was like, well, I'm told he's a great guy.
Well, number one, America is the only country in the world that is founded on an idea. Every other country in the world was founded on geographic location, where you're at. America was founded on an idea, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We don't need a king or a ruler to basically dictate what we do. America.
And
So-
even just, but even more specific than that, very specifically in the Declaration of Independence, this is self-evident according to God. He
Correct.
wants men to be free.
Yeah.
That's the
Correct.
starting point of the United States of America, is that I'm starting with God wants me to be free. And the only reason why government exists is to protect my freedom.
Correct.
It's an unbelievable starting point for a country. It's not a coincidence that was our starting point, and this
Exactly.
became the most successful country in world history.
Exactly. And then to Ricky's point, you asked who the tyrants are. I would respond with anything with the word big in it. Big tech, big pharma, big military industrial complex, big government, big lobby, anything with big that is consolidating power. Okay, and the list can go on from that. Now,
On a local level, brother. On a local level, who is your enemy on a local? Who's a tyrant on the local level? City council, mayor, governor.
School boards.
School boards. Who's my enemy? Who is my enemy and where do they lean? That's all I want to know. Who's my enemy? How do you vote? You're my enemy. Hey, on a local, I'm not talking, I can't fight big tech. I can't fight big pharma. Not right now, I can't.
Well,
so who's my enemy and where do you vote?
This is where we differ, Ricky, because in Florida here, it's a very purple state. I don't have enemies here. I have my neighbors, I have my friends, I have people I might disagree with.
You have
in California,
Floridian
Ricky,
privilege. You have Floridian privilege.
Damn right.
Okay, so in California,
so fucking
who are
move
my
out of
enemies?
California if you don't want that privilege.
I'm just explaining to you.
I understand.
Who's my
And this
enemy
is-
in California?
Well, in California, you have enemies because you're one of 33% of Californians who agree with you, where you have 67% of people who are like, fuck you, I'm going woke agenda. And that's what California's falling apart. Even though they have a top five.
So the tyrants are clear. There is a clear line. You can't tell me I can't see my city councilman. You can't see that I can't see a.
So get involved, Ricky.
I'm just asking. So no, it's not for me, bro. I know.
So get
for
involved.
the people that don't know, who is your local tyrant?
I don't know. We don't have a local tyrant. In
know
Miami,
you
I
don't.
have Mayor Francis Suarez, who's our buddy, and he's an awesome fucking mayor.
Yeah, but your audience, the people are watching this, not just in Florida, bro. It's all over the country.
But that's where
It's
I
all over
live.
the
You're
world.
asking about local.
So who's okay? So
I don't know what's going on in California.
So
That's for you to figure out.
Who would be a local enemy?
I don't have local enemies. That's my point.
So I can't see where they publicly vote and then realize that's my enemy if they're voting for the same bullshit everybody else voting for.
Let's talk about a few things.
But
here.
can
Let's
I just
transition.
add one thing?
Go for it.
And this is, I think, is very important of what you were talking about conservative Muslims and all this and everything with that.
Turning red.
I think I am. It's hot in here and I need some water. But the point is this: America is changing exponentially. I got water. We're good.
There you go.
America is changing exponentially. 50 years ago, if I asked you this question, rank the following thing. I've done this on my show multiple times. Rank the following three things in the order of which is most important to you of who you would marry: race, religion, or politics. Race would be number one. A black and a white guy. A black woman and a white guy. Oh my God. Now it's the exact opposite. We see mixed race couples, no problem. Zero people have issues with that. Number two is religion. Okay, Jews, Muslims, whatever, this, that, Christians, this, Buddhists, yeah, maybe, Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever. But by far and away, the number one thing today is kind of what Pat was saying, is that imagine a capitalist Republican MAGA person marrying a socialist woke Democrat. It just wouldn't happen.
And I would say the woke thing even more than the socialist thing. Like it'd be one thing to be like a capitalist with a socialist would still be pretty tough. But could you? I just can't even fathom being married to like a social justice warrior type chick.
Right.
Like I don't understand. I don't think we could get through an hour.
Right.
Like there's no possible way.
It's like Dave Chappelle.
You know what I mean? Like it's how would that
If
even
he
work?
wants to be a girl at 4 years old, let him be a girl.
This
Affirm
isn't
their
gonna work.
transition.
It's like Dave Chappelle used to do a skit about you got to have mutual interest, baby. It's like I can't be going to church, you can't be smoking crack. Like that's just not how it works. Okay, so like that's where we're at in society today, is that the right and the left are so far removed from each other. And I actually agree with Ricky on the Democrats, especially in California. The left has gone so freaking far left. And you're talking to a guy, my dad had a picture of JFK growing up. I'm like, yo, JFK, that's my guy. All right, he got shot in the head, or I could keep it moving, but he banged Marilyn Monroe. Cool, whatever. And then I was raised in that classic liberal type of environment. And then Obama came in, and it's like, all right, so the White House is now gay now. All right, cool. With the light, and that's like, and then all of a sudden this trans stuff. I'm like, I'm a dude who likes to play football. What's this trans thing? Like, so it takes like liberals to be like Bill Maher, for example, or a Joe Manchin, for an example, who are Democrats, but they're like, yeah, we're not down for all this kind of stuff. And the Democratic Party has sprinted so far left that it's unrecognizable at this point. And the problem is, like, you hit the nail on the head. George W. Bush ruined the Republican Party. That's the reason why.
It's the reason why. It's
Donald
the reason
Trump was
why
elected.
so many things.
He cut down
Well,
Jeb Bush.
It's also partially responsible for why we went. You know, when you're talking about how the left went so out of control, you know, a lot of this was because the George W. Bush administration ended in such disaster that it was almost like they had no seat at the table anymore. I mean,
Do
look,
you know that he had the
there was-
highest and lowest approval
Yes,
ratings of every
yes.
president?
After 9/11,
Yeah,
he had the highest approval rating.
percent
And
approval
look,
rating. At
also
the time he was out of office, it was like 20%.
this might be almost hard for I think younger people. You know, like I do a lot of shows and I have a young audience, so I'll talk to like 20-year-olds and stuff, and they don't really, you know, they were like babies when this was happening.
They're
But
babies
it's-
now.
Well, yeah, but they don't like remember it. I'm saying that you almost feel like the left just controls the broader culture. But this actually was not the case immediately following 9/11. The culture had a very right-wing mood to it. It was very much about like patriotism and hierarchy and military and go America, which was a natural response to being attacked, you know? And it was very much like, and essentially the American people, as you mentioned, the highest approval ratings since we've been recording, presidential approval ratings, the American people gave George W. Bush a blank check to fight this war on terrorism. They go, you have whatever war you want, whatever action you want, whatever policy you want. If you want to grope us at the airports, if you want to torture people,
Enter the Patriot Act.
you want to open Guantanamo Bay, the Patriot Act, the Department of Homeland Security being created, whatever you want. And he spent this blank check on 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that led to the deaths of over 1 million people. And what we got for it in turn was our bravest young men blowing their brains out by the tens of thousands at the price tag of trillions of dollars, and the region completely destabilized anyway. Just nothing but, I mean, Lockheed Martin and Raytheon got a lot out of it. You know, there's a whole bunch, if you look in Washington, D.C., there's a whole bunch of millionaires out there in Washington, D.C. who did very well off of it.
I talked about this the other day, the zip codes with the highest, what is it, incomes?
Every crime, that the zip code with the highest crime in every category. It doesn't matter, burglary, you're talking about murder, everything, the highest, number one, is D.C., but the city also with the most people making over $200,000 a year is D.C.
And all of them are making it because they're in some way politically
in the entire
connected.
country, including New York, including L.A., Newport Beach, Miami, DC's number one, most people making over $200,000 per year.
So, but anyway, just to my point, so then after, and of course now this is what we get out of George W. Bush's blank check, and then on top of that, his presidency ends with the worst financial crash in 100 years. So it was just like, it was like so obvious. So, and this is why Barack Obama is elected, because he was the most anti-George W. Bush thing that people could think of, right? And then Obama comes in and continues all of the Bush policies after running on, I'm going to repeal all of these policies. And then, look, there was a pivot. It was in 2012. Okay, it was when Obama was running for re-election. And what did Obama come out and say for his re-election campaign? Did he come out and say, hey, look, remember I told you I would close Guantanamo Bay, and I did it? No, he couldn't say that. Did he say I ended the war in Iraq? No, he couldn't say that. Did he say we're not torturing people anymore? Did he say we're not dropping bombs? No, in fact, by this point in 2012, not only had Obama continued the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, he had also launched a stupid regime change war in Libya. He was starting to fund a civil war in Syria, and he had the drone bomb campaigns in Yemen and Pakistan. So what did he say? He's got this base of liberals who he hasn't done anything that he promised. So what did he say? I'm for gay marriage. I'm the first president who's ever been for gay marriage. And they put the White House up with the pride flag colors. And if you go look at it, look, this was a concerted effort from the top. You can go look. There are these nexus charts where you can map out words in major publications. I'm not talking about mom and pop news outlets. I'm talking about the New York Times, the Washington Post, like the big dogs. Go track how many times the word racism was mentioned. And around 2012, it shoots up. Social justice shoots up. Transgenderism shoots up. White privilege shoots up. This was forced on the American people. Why are we having these conversations now? No, the people did not wake up one day and decide, we want to have a national conversation about chicks with dicks. That didn't happen. This wasn't an organic movement. It was all of the most powerful people decided this is what we're going to talk about. And why was that? Because it's the perfect, look, when you're failing on policy, you pivot to a culture war. You pit people against each other, so they're fighting each other. We had in this country, we had an Occupy Wall Street movement where leftists were standing outside of big banks screaming, we are the 99%. Right-wingers had a populist movement called the Tea Party, where they were outraged about the bailouts of big banks, unsustainable debt, government spending. They don't like that. That's not what the powers that be like. You're getting too close. Look, they like you fighting about issues like abortion. Now, I'm not saying abortion isn't a very important issue. It's a very important issue. But us fighting about that issue doesn't scare anyone at the Federal Reserve. It doesn't scare anyone in the CIA. They don't care if you fight about that issue. They love you fighting over transgender bathrooms.
Yep.
They have no, and you can see this every day. They're stoking this culture war because they have to distract from the fact that they completely failed on everything else. That everything in the 20th century so far for America, politically speaking, has been a disaster.
It's like distracting people with the submarine.
Huh?
They distract you with the submarine, but the other issues are
Stories
going
like
on too
that,
as
they
well.
love stories like that. CNN loves an airplane crashing. They love something where it'll get clicks and no powerful people will be upset about it. If they actually loved real stories that just got clicks, there's a lot of stories that get clicked. They've been passing them up for years. It's part of the reason why shows like this, shows like Joe Rogan, are taken off, because they can run stories. Hey, do you think that like people getting vaccine injured is not a story that would generate a lot of views for CNN? The vaccine that the government just mandated has hurt all of these people. That's a huge story. Why won't they run it? Because all their commercials are freaking pharmaceutical companies.
Yep.
They don't want to piss off powerful interests, so they're not in the game of that. So they have to create something for you to be afraid of, you know, white supremacist terrorism is everywhere, you know?
Like we talked about with the tyrants, Big Pharma.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We say this. We talk about this on podcasts all the time, right, Pat? There's two countries in the
That
world.
rant was, listen, I'm still on that rant.
That was amazing.
Man. That was, it makes some noise for Dave, man. I was unbelievable on what
was
you just said
amazing.
there.
Thank you.
You know, I want to go to the next story. I will tell you guys, the last rant, what it did confirm that the biggest threat to America is no longer chicks with dicks. That was very important to know that. Thank you for that.
Don't ask, don't
insight.
tell.
Hold on,
Please go ahead.
you didn't let me finish the rant. It gets there. So now it is a problem.
Next one, I want to talk about what's going on in Hollywood. Anybody following what's going on in Hollywood with the strikes? Who has no clue what's going on in Hollywood with strikes? Okay, this is pretty big. Ron Perlman, who played Hellboy, he played in Hellboy, and what's the other one he was in? He was in Beauty and the Beast back in 1987. He was the Beast. And then the other character was who? Brandon, what was it?
Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy. Okay, so Ron Perlman makes a video, and he calls out this man that's making $27 million a year. Right now, guys, in Hollywood, it's absolute shambles. May, 11,500 people from the Writers Guild went on strike, which means, Rob, if you want to go on YouTube right now, 11,500 writers went on strike in May. The last time Jimmy Fallon has done an episode was in May. The last time Stephen Colbert did an episode was in May. The last time Jimmy Kimmel did an episode was in May, because there is no writer. So go on YouTube and go to Jimmy Fallon's episode. It's the best of. It's the best of. It's the best of. 2 months, no shows, right? No movies, no shows, no streaming, nothing. Everybody's on lockdown. Then this week, July 14th, 150,000 members from SAG went on strike. So now there's 1,500 people in Hollywood who are not working. And by the way, if you're part of SAG, you can't have another job. So for example, we were inviting, Rob, who were we inviting here that said he can't? James Woods. James Woods said, I can't work. I'm part of SAG. So he can't even come on the podcast to speak because
even that's considered work.
James's camp emailed Rob back saying I can't because I'm part of SAG. So watch this. While this is going on, Hollywood has got all these issues. Ron Perlman and others respond, but his one is the most entertaining one. Brace for impact. There's a lot of curse words, but he's talking about somebody, and I'll highlight to you who he's talking about. Go ahead.
Thing before I get off this. The motherfucker who said we're going to keep this thing going until people start losing their houses and their apartments. Listen to me, motherfucker. There's a lot of ways to lose your house. Some of it is financial, some of it is karma, and some of it is just figuring out who the fuck said that. And we know who said that, and where he fucking lives. There's a lot of ways to lose your house. You wish that on people. You wish that families starve while you're making $27 fucking million a year for creating nothing. Be careful, motherfucker. Be really careful. Because that's the kind of shit that stirs shit up. Peace out.
Obviously, he held back from, really showing his emotions, which was very noble of him.
Definitely restrained.
But so we're sitting there figuring out who this $27 million guy he's talking about. So type in I go online, I'm thinking he's talking about this guy. We Google Kelly. We're in the room. It's me, you, and who? Brandon, right? We're in the room. Was Maverick in the room or was Mike in the room? One of the guys. Maverick was in the room. Bambi, yes. So we Google. Check this out. Bob Iger's income last year. Type in Bob Iger made $27 million last year.
Woo.
Oh, wow. So he's calling out Bob Iger.
Look at that.
So then Bob Iger had an interview with CNBC that we go and find. We're not going to play it for you because it's 3-4 minutes long. I just kind of paraphrase what he said. He says, look, it's a shame what they're doing right now because there's a lot of people that are relying for jobs and they got to go out there and do this and they got to go out there and do that. And these guys they have to live in their homes, they have to pay their rents, they have to pay their mortgages. So he's talking about Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, making $27 million a year. So now, question then becomes, okay, so where do they go from here with everything that's going on in Hollywood? Watch some of the stats on what's going on in Hollywood, by the way. We sat there, it's me, the group, and I said, you know what I want to know? Let's look at box office numbers. If you can pull up Hollywood box office numbers, Statista. Was it Statista or Pew Research? Statista. Hollywood box office, world box office numbers, Statista, right there. Click on that one. It should be, 2019 should be 43 billion. No, go to the other chart that actually, well, you can use that one. Zoom in a little bit. Zoom in a little bit. Zoom in. No, this is not the one. It's another one. Brandon, if you can text Rob when he finds it, go back. Maybe go to the second one. That could be the one. Yeah, go to that one right there. I think this is the one. Perfect. Look at the 2005 global box office. Go up so people can see what the top title says. Global box office revenue from 2005 to 2021. In 2005, global box office was 23.1 billion. In 2019, it's 42.3 billion. Every year it's going up. Boom, COVID happens. Drops to 11.8, then it goes to 21.3, and last year was only $25 billion, just so you guys know. We haven't gone back to $42 billion yet. Fine, no problem. Now watch the other part. We're having this conversation. The discussion becomes, you know, Kelly says, Pat, how do you feel about this? You know, how do you feel about this? I said, I'll never forget the gentleman that was buying the company. Tom, you'll remember this call. He says, Patrick, we have agreed on this number. He and I talk on the phone. He says, the next 3 to 6 months, there's only going to be one community that's going to ruin this from becoming a reality, and it's the lawyers. Your lawyers, my lawyers, are going to fight, and they're going to make this deal not happen. Every time it gets to the point when the deal doesn't happen, you and I got to get on the phone to get us. I said, no problem. So you know whose lawyer screwed it up first? Tom, whose lawyer was it? You can say it. It's our lawyer. Our lawyer, day one, on a Zoom with all their lawyers, blasts all of them. You guys don't know what the fuck you're doing. I'm like, so I get the call. Pat, you won't even believe we were on the Zoom. It was the most uncomfortable Zoom. Our lawyer did this and da. So okay, I'll give him a week. Maybe he's going to cool off. He had a bad day. Second day, same thing. Third day, fourth. Anyways, eventually we have to get on the call. This deal's not going to happen. Union in the middle right now is what's ruining Hollywood. Union in the middle is getting these guys to do what they're doing. The guys at the top of all these big companies are making the money. Unions holding hostage because they're asking for a lot, saying, well, what about this and what about that? One part of the side that talent does have a proper argument, because this is, you know, they're scanning actors right now.
For AI.
And once they're scanning your body, they can use it without giving you credit. The end of the movie Flash, have you guys seen the movie Flash with your kids? The end of the movie Flash, they're using dead characters and they have it in there through CGI, but they're not paying that person. So essentially these guys are saying, wait a minute, you're using my likeness, my body, I should get paid. Some are saying 100%. I can see the debate being maybe they pay you 10%, they pay you 20%, maybe they pay you 30%, but it can't be free. It's me. You can't do that. Pay me my, so there's good arguments there, but at the same time, AI, well, we don't want you to use AI, all this other stuff. Then we wrapped it up with this, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I said, let's go and measure the top 100 greatest movies of all time. What is the most credible source to go to? Give me the website that we can trust. What is it?
IMDb.
Perfect. We went to IMDb. Do you know the top 100 greatest movies of all time? What decade had the most movies as the top 100 greatest movies of all time?
80s or 90s, I would guess.
I think it was 50s was first.
Huh.
I want to say was it 60s first? No, I was. Yeah. So I think it was 50s, 60s, 70s. Then it went to 30s, 40s, Wow. And then it was tied with 90s, then 80s, and then in 2000 was only 3 movies in the top 100. The 3 movies were The Pianist, if you've seen it. If you haven't, it's a phenomenal movie. Then it was Gladiator, and I think the other one was Lord of the Rings. That was from 2000. Do you know in the last 20 years, 23 years, with all the technology, with all the CGI, with all the Photoshop, all the stuff that they have, they've only produced 3 movies that are in the top 100 greatest movies of all time. Why?
Well, I think there might be a direct relation between that, because sometimes, you know, when you go and watch these old movies, when they had none of that, what you needed to have was a great movie.
Story.
You know, because you had to have a great story, because otherwise it's like there's nothing else to do with this. Whereas now you can really just like, it becomes a crutch, just crazy action scenes and crazy things like that that aren't, you know, might be enough to get people to go see the movie, but aren't enough for them to be like, oh, this was like an all-time great. It's also, look, this whole industry has been, like what we were talking about, like the industry in how people consume news, but how people consume entertainment. I mean, we're in the middle of a revolution, nothing short of a revolution. Like when I was a kid, it was very normal when I was a kid to not have cable. Like when I was a little kid, we were kind of broke. We didn't have cable. We didn't have cable till my mom met my stepfather, and he had cable, and I was like, there's more channels. What do you mean? But like, we had...
Mom married that guy.
We had 5 channels on our TV. It was like there were 5 channels, and then there was like movie theaters, and that was like entertainment. That was like the only way to get something. Today, like me and my wife, like we've turned on cable maybe 5 times in the last year. I don't even know why I pay for it. We're always like watching something on Netflix or on Hulu or on Amazon or something like that. But we now have, not only do you, for entertainment, you not only have, you have a world of podcasts and internet shows and all types of like streaming stuff, content creators, all types of streaming shows, and then you also have access to the entirety of Hollywood, all of the history of it, right on your what would be considered movie theater sized TV. That you have several of in your house.
Surround sound.
So, yeah, and like all, I mean, it's basically almost a movie experience in most people's living rooms today. So they're just tough when you hit something like 2020, where all of a sudden nothing's being produced anymore, and everybody realizes all of these other options. Even once things kind of reopen up back in 2021, it's like you're left with this like, well, I don't really know if I need to make sure I go catch the latest movie. I don't know why
you're just waiting for it to
like,
come out on Netflix
yeah,
or Premiere
like, yeah,
or Amazon Prime or...
Which I personally, for me, like I got 2 little kids. It's a whole thing for us to go out to the movies. You know what I mean? If there's a movie we want to watch, I kind of much rather find it in the house anyway. Like, and then we go out and do something else. I think we're in a revolution in this.
By the way, nowadays we're so busy. We're watching movies on 2.0. It's kind of like Titanic. Everything's fast. But here's the decades. You guys want to know if you can put this up so people can see it. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. So the #1 decade was the 50s.
Wow.
Then it went to 70s, tied 60s and 90s were tied, then 40s, 30s, then 1980s, and the last place is 2000s for movies.
I literally only go to the movies when PBD does a Valuetainment field trip, when we go see Air.
What was the last one? Air, right?
I saw Air, or I saw The Sound of Freedom. Thank you, Matt Sapaula, for that recommendation. But I also think that, like, I don't even know what's in the movie theaters these days, but it's like Fast and Furious 57 or Harry Potter 19 or Avengers 417. I think it's just the same nonsense over and over and over and over again.
But by the way, did you watch the last Fast and the Furious movie?
No.
Have you watched it, Dave? The last Fast and the Furious movie?
I don't think I've ever seen a full Fast and Furious movie.
The new character they have, interesting individual.
So you're the guy watching the movie. There it is.
Yeah,
2020.
bro, duh. That's why I asked you if you watched it.
So let's talk about Sounds of Freedom. So by the way, a big part of what's going on as well, when you think about all of this, is the ESG requirements, which you have to add into movies. You're forcing people into these movies. You have to have a certain number of people part of LGBTQ. You know, right now in Hollywood, to be nominated for Oscars, you have to have a certain amount of disabled people working on a movie.
Yep.
You guys haven't? Did you hear what I just said or no?
Yes.
Okay, can you please pull up the new guidelines to be nominated for Oscars to show everybody what the guidelines are? You have to be, did you actually hear what I just said?
You gotta have a gay, you gotta have a midget, you gotta have a trans, you gotta have a black guy that turned into a midget that was formerly gay. Like, there's so much DEI, ESG
Can there
going
just
on
be
right
like,
now.
can there be one person who fits all of the, like one, just like one black, gay, trans midget who we can just put in every movie just for like
He'd
a
be the
second.
highest paid actor, by the way.
Yeah. But just like for one
John
second.
Doe made $728 million this year.
But then we're just like, they're covered.
Has no
like,
life.
Now you can make your movie.
He's taking all the jobs, though. That guy's taking all the jobs.
By the way, no, can you pull up the guideline? Here's a guideline, just so you guys know, if you wanted to know. So moving forward, at least one lead actor or significant supporting actor has to be from underrepresented racial, ethnic group or specific country or territory. Production, that may include rap. Go a little bit to the right because Adam's foot is not letting me go the other way. The other way. Other way. There you go.
What's Latina
that may include
EOX?
African American, Black African, Caribbean descent, East Asian, Hispanic, Latino, indigenous people, Middle Eastern, North African, Pacific Islander, South
Just
Asians.
say everything except white men. Jesus. Why do we have to list
bullet
it?
point.
We get it.
One bullet point.
Everyone else. Like,
And then, by the way, here's the other part. Here's the other part.
A2?
Watch this. At least 30% of all the can you highlight that part, Rob, so they can see where I'm reading? At least 30% of all actors in secondary and more minor roles are from at least two underrepresented groups, which may include women, racial or ethnic, LGBTQ, and watch the last one. People with cognitive or physical disabilities who are deaf or hard of hearing.
What?
By the way, the new guidelines, hear me out, the new guidelines. The last, I think, 50 movies that won Movie of the Year, the Oscar, none of them would have won based on these guidelines. That's the direction Hollywood is going.
PB, read A3. Can you continue with A3?
Go for it.
About
What's
what,
A3?
About what the main storyline
Main
needs to be about.
storyline subject, the main storyline theme or narrative of the film centered on underrepresented groups, women, racial or ethnic groups, LGBTQ, people with cognitive, same exact thing as well.
By the way, did you watch the last Fast and Furious movie, Pat?
I know which story you're going to talk about. The fact that Aquaman was a guy that was gay.
Now he's a gay bad guy in flamboyant, super like the entire movie was just like, are you serious?
Jason Momoa?
Jason Momoa.
He was gay in the Fast and Furious
Pretty
movie?
much, bro. Pretty much. Flamboyant and doing his nails and doing the nails of a dead guy and just weird shit he was doing in the movie, bro.
Is
He's
Aquaman gay or
the whole time.
bisexual?
By the way, in about a couple minutes, we're going to go to. Anybody have any questions? Or in about a couple minutes, we're going to go to questions on any questions you guys want to have.
Speaking
and
of
then we'll
movies,
wrap
by the
up.
way,
But
shout out
let's
to
do-
The Rock's little cousin right here, Matt Sapaula.
By the way, let's wrap it up with this. Let's wrap it up with this. Sounds of Freedom.
Yes.
Okay?
Let's talk-
Simple
Let's
story.
talk about it.
Told a story, $100 million, crowdfunded Christian movie, Sound of Freedom, hits $100 million, tops Mission Impossible,
Amen.
Wednesday star calls Trump
incredible.
a new Moses on Fox.
Amen.
I'm assuming you guys saw it. I know you did. Can you tell us what Matt, you and I watched it together in Bahamas. Ricky, have you seen it already or not?
Yes.
Matt, your biggest takeaway when you watch a movie?
We came back from Bahamas, and then on Tuesday in Oak Brook, we had a Super BOM, and then the next morning, on Wednesday morning, 11:30, on first show before I left on my flight, Oak Brook Money Smart movie showed up to the theater. We packed it. I can't imagine being that father in that movie who felt so daggone helpless, knowing that he didn't know who to call, who to talk to, and he can't track his kids. He's poor, he doesn't have the resources. His babies just got taken. He's a single father. I was resonating with that because I was a single father raising my kids. And I'm asking myself this question too as well. You know, we all laugh about that movie Taken. I mean, people think it's an action movie. What's that movie really? It's a human trafficking movie. Yep. But we missed it because we got distracted with an action movie. And what does Liam Nielsen say in that movie? I have a set of special skills. I'm going to find you, right? So I'm asking myself this question. Because you've always coached us, PBD, to always prepare for no matter what's, if a distraction is coming your way, do you have a action plan for that? So I'm asking myself this question. Who do I call if my kids are Amber Alerted and kidnapped that has a special set of freaking skills to go after somebody like this? And we found him. And we had him on our, we have a podcast, and we interviewed him Wednesday, and he was talking about a case study that we're going right now in Dallas. Right down the street from Frisco is Louisville. This 17-year-old, so it's a working case they're working on it right now. It's a 17-year-old. She's currently being trafficked since she was 13. She can't get out to life because the pimp said, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this. They take a selfie in front of their mom's house. We know where your mom lives, and if you don't do this, we're also going to take your 10-year-old sister, we're going to bring her into the life. We're going to flip her. So she does the job. She's like, I can't do this anymore, I can't do this anymore. Fine, if you don't want to do this anymore, you need to recruit your replacement. So in the movie, Sound of Freedom, the recruiters weren't the guys. It wasn't some weird dude in a mask, glasses, and a white van. It was a woman. It was a non-threatening person So this 17-year-old girl recruits this 10-year-old and was horrified what happened. So she promises this girl candy and ice cream. But what she finds is a bunch of guys that kidnapped her, shot her full of fentanyl, and she had to hear this 10-year-old girl for the next 2 hours gang raped to continue the process of desensitizing her for what the rest of her life is going to look like. So, Christian, Muslim, Mormon, no matter what, left, right, can we all agree that we never ever want to have that happen to our kids? That's our enemy. That's our enemy. We're all distracted with all this bullshit, but the enemy is what? The drug trade is not even sexy more to the gangbangers. I got to go all the way to get my cocaine, cross the border, got to find a mule, blah, blah. That right now is not the opportunity if you're a gangster. Because it's expensive to get in a drug game. What do you buy a key for? 30K and you flip it for 60? Mm-hmm. Right? Or you
I don't know, I just
or
How do you know these numbers, man?
I'm Chicago. I watch.
Ricky, validate those numbers.
I don't know, bro. I don't. What national TV, bro? Like,
He's like, I gotta get a half off.
dry snitching.
But if you got to get a key so you can be a corner boy, you can drug deal in your city, but it's also expensive. So for example, if you have crime and you're doing drive-bys, people know they see a car, you have a description, they're gonna find you. You have drugs, people are on drugs. Obviously, By the way, how many guys were raised around people that you saw in the neighborhood? People are on drugs, right? High, crazy, right? How they look. So you can tell there's drugs in the neighborhood. The thing with human trafficking, you can't tell.
Yeah.
It's a hidden crime. Yeah. And if you got caught with drugs, you got caught doing drive-bys, you're gonna get arrested, you're gonna be prosecuted, you're gonna spend some time in jail. The problem with human trafficking is, even if the person gets caught with the person that they're pimping out, because they have them in such a lock, they're going to deny that that's their pimp, because if they follow through with it, they know where mom lives. They know where the family lives. So they say, no, this is my friend. And what happens is there's not enough laws. There's not the whole defund the police movement. Guess what they've defunded? Human trafficking. They didn't learn from. So we've had these nonprofit organizations to be the ones that are taking guys, Navy SEALs. If you're a Navy SEAL, a former law enforcement special ops, there's organizations that are trying to recruit you right now to be that Liam Neeson character to go out and defend us, because that is going to be our next wave. Like we like LoJack when our cars are getting ripped off right now. Imagine having to get a LoJack for your kids. So that's the era that we're facing right now. And anybody that's against this, that's minimizing this, that's coming against this, thank you for exposing yourself. We now know who our enemy is too.
Yeah. So, by the way, number one, that's a man right there. That's a father right there. Shout out to Matt Sapaula. I mean, emotional. So, seriously, Pat recommended we watch the movie, right? And I think you watched it in the Bahamas. I was on vacation. I don't know where I was. And then I get home and I see you do a video with like 20, like an army behind you.
Yeah. So
you're encouraging everybody, go watch this movie. I go watch the movie. And the day before on the podcast, we were discussing it, and there were headlines, Rolling Stone, certain magazines, articles, like disparaging the movie and basically marginalizing the whole concept of the movie.
For sure.
So I go into the movie
unbelievable.
Already knowing, all right, they called it a QAnon conspiracy theory. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, all right, let's look for these clues. So I sit through the 2.5 hour movie, and I'm thinking, all right, like, when's the QAnon thing coming? When's the right-wing conspiracy thing coming? And it was just generally a movie about freaking child sex trafficking. Period, end of story. And the fact that it's politicized, and there's people being like, no, it's kind of okay, is like so shocking to me.
Well, it's like even if the argument is that like if they're saying like, oh, they're making it out like this happens in larger numbers than it does, it's like, well, if it happens at all,
right?
That's the problem. Isn't that worth making a movie about? Like, you guys make movies about things that are incredibly rare all the time.
But Dave, it's not that if it happens at all, it actually is happening more and more and more and more. So it's not just a tiny little blip on the radar right there.
No, I'm just making the point that even if it was, it would still be legitimate to like raise awareness about it.
It's a disgusting, heinous act, and people that are basically trying to minimize it and marginalize it, I don't understand why.
Well, clearly, I think obviously the reason why it plays into this kind of bigger political. By the way, I have not seen the movie yet, so I can't comment on it, although I'm definitely going to. But clearly, it's like there's something to this idea of like the evil of preying on children and the evil of like sexualizing children. That is something that's on everybody's mind right now. And then here's an example of like the most egregious form of that. And then you see, it's very bizarre to see these kind of like progressive types who are kind of already have been caught kind of normalizing the sexualization of children. But look, there is, I was talking about this just the other day. There was that quote by, what's the beautiful woman's name? Levine, the
Rachel
military.
Levine?
Yes, the transgender in the
Let's
military.
pull up a picture of her, Rob.
She was making the argument
Put it up, Rob.
very blatantly. Beautiful woman with a penis.
Gorgeous.
She was making the argument that like kids can choose.
This former rear admiral.
Gentlemen, try
By
to
the way,
not
this
get
is your
aroused.
health. This is your health. This is what Democrats voted for as your health expert.
This is a Navy admiral.
Picked by Democrats, health expert. Overweight man that thinks he's a overweight man thinks he's a woman. That's this is a Biden administration for you.
She was appointed.
So this dude was talking about
Dave,
how
dare you?
I'm sorry. So it was a comment about how that kids, that pubescent children should be allowed to make the decision to get hormone treatment and puberty blockers because they know what puberty they're supposed to go through and they know this. And look, it is obviously just the idea of giving kids puberty blockers or hormone is like horrific. But there's something almost more fundamental to the foundational claim there, which is essentially that children can consent.
It's right here, bro.
Because if you can consent to this, I mean, that is the most permanent, that is so much greater of a decision than having sex or having a tattoo or getting drunk.
Well,
You're talking about a permanent, lifelong decision.
Well, you have to be 16 to have a driver's license. You need to be 18 to serve in the army or vote. You need to be 21 to drink, but you can be 10 years old and cut your dick off.
That's not even the worst part about it. There's already a state that passed that if parents don't affirm this bullshit when their kids are minors, they could take your kids from you.
I don't know. I saw that when that was proposed.
Well, by the way, California, luckily they just vetoed it, but because of one party that has all the power in California, they just voted that being a pedophile or having sex with a minor or sex trafficking for minors is not considered a bad crime. They literally just voted for that, and they got so much backlash that they had to switch it over. But it just happened, SB something in California. They literally just passed that. So I'm saying, there is something to fight off. And there is
100%. I hope people realize, Tucker Carlson gave, he gave that speech. It was the last speech right before he got fired from Fox and started the Twitter show. And he had a point in there that I thought was really, really profound, where he was just saying that, this isn't really a political battle. This is a theological battle when you get into terms like that. The idea that, you shouldn't prey on children is not a right-wing view. It's not a left-wing view.
No. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's just a sane, normal person's view.
This is a good versus evil view. And there's really no other way to conceive of it other than that.
Ephesians 6:11. That's it. It's right there.
So then, if it's not political, then why is it political?
Well, the political process is being used. But the point I'm making when I say it's not political is that it's not as if, if you get into the idea is if you propose that taxing wealthy people and redistributing that money makes for a more just society, and then I want to argue, well, no, actually, in fact, lowering taxes allows those wealthy people to invest in companies, creating more jobs and expanding the economy. We're having a political debate. If you say, I think we should be preying on your children and propagandizing them, I'm not having a political debate with you anymore.
So then why is it politicized?
You're getting an ass
Because
whooping.
they're using the power of government.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, I mean, there's no more it's just the realm is now in it's a theological debate. You're talking about child sacrifice now. This is not it's a different type of debate. It's political because obviously laws and politicians are involved in it. I'm just saying that it's you almost have to conceive of it in a different way. This isn't left wing versus right wing. We have these different political ideologies that are competing with each other.
It's a moral issue.
I disagree.
What do you disagree?
I disagree that it's not political and that it's not left versus right. 100% it is. And it just is. I don't care what anybody says. It's the truth because there's only one party pushing it. That you can mutilate your children. That you're gonna get arrested if you don't affirm their gender. That all this the SB bullshit. There's only one party pushing it. It is 100% political, and it's easily identified on who's pushing it. It's that simple.
You're not wrong, Ricky. You're not wrong.
But I'm not.
It is
politicized.
I'm not arguing that there's one political party who's more guilty of it. What I'm arguing is when you say the term left wing, historically, what left wing versus right wing has meant is that left-wingers believed in egalitarianism and right-wingers believed in traditional hierarchies. This doesn't fall into that. Like, this is a completely different thing.
That's what makes it more sick.
This is a different beast.
Dave, that's what makes it more sick.
Yeah, no, I don't actually think we're disagreeing.
That's even, no. I know we're not disagreeing. That's what I'm saying.
Well, your tone seems to indicate we are.
No. If anybody, but let me tell you why. The fact that it shouldn't be politicized.
Yo, Dave, you're my best friend, bro. Everything you say,
I love you, dude. Let's go get beers.
All right?
No,
I love you, dog.
Here's a Bud Light.
I love you.
I just the fact that it's like it shouldn't be political, but it is political. For example, where's Natalia? Natalia is sitting right here. Her mom posts, "Go watch Sounds of Freedom," and some goddamn idiot that looks educated. You can look at your mom's Facebook thread. I don't know if you saw it already. I'm going back and forth with this guy. He's like, "Oh, it's some QAnon right-wing conspiracy." Bro, fuck you, bro. Like, what are you talking about?
I agree.
Like, what are you talking about? And I guarantee you, if I look at his voting card, it's gonna have a big-ass D on it. I guarantee you.
And not
Can I ask you guys?
Can
I ask you guys, because I have not seen the movie, so I'm just genuinely curious. Is there anything in it about how, like, there is something like going on with the political class being involved with this? There's no. So there's just there's no like conspiracy.
Zero about
it's just
politics.
the story of.
Brother, it's 100%. There's zero politics, and let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I get more upset about it. Okay. All of our cultures have something going on. Obviously, yours went through a whole the Holocaust. Everybody's here. Here's the reality behind things right now. Okay, right now, 30% of women. 30% of my people coming up the border are being raped and human trafficked coming from the border of Guatemala to Mexico to the border. I've sat down in front of 50. I recruited this girl. When she was 15, she was gang raped by 12 men. And the only reason that she was saved was because the lady that was cooking for the men bought her from there to save them. I've seen this shit. It's not right wing or left wing. And there's only one goddamn party trying to make this okay. And it's not okay. And it's not, no, you can't mutilate your goddamn kids. No, you should not lower the law to make it less worse for these idiots to go to jail. It's defined who's supporting this bullshit.
My brother, I just
listen,
can't.
You're
right.
It's
you're
my
right.
people
Listen,
that are doing
I understand.
it.
You're right to be outraged. It's appalling what's happening to girls and boys on coming up.
But it happens in my country, brother. So I take it, and I've lived in my country, and I've been there and I've seen it.
If you're pushing the open borders policies or the de facto open borders policies that you're talking about of the Biden administration, they were absolutely pushed by the entire Republican the entire Republican establishment as well. Jeb Bush was out there on the debate stage saying it's an act of love. We have to let them all in here. It wasn't until Donald Trump that Republicans were even raising this issue.
I'm just saying
it's just not. There's a lot of guilt in the Republican Party as well.
That. I get it, because obviously the only reason illegal immigration works is because it's illegal. Because you can exploit. I get that.
Yeah.
Both sides profit from that. But when we have the remain in Mexico, again, I understand what you're saying, and I totally get it. I don't disagree with you. Everything you're saying are facts. But we're living in right now.
Agreed.
And right now, when you have open borders and it incentivizes people to traffic other people, it's majority of the people that are being affected by it are my people right now. Not 400 years ago, not your goddamn ancestors, right now.
Yeah, I agree.
It's
in many ways,
right now, under this administration, for people that voted on this president, and it's happening on a local level, on a state level, on a community level, right now.
Yeah,
that's my issue.
In many ways, we have the worst of all worlds, because it's like these de facto open borders where, to your point, it is still technically illegal. So you're still technically in this black market where you're not protected by anything. So it's not just pure legal open borders.
Because you're exploited.
Pure open borders would be legal for everyone to come in, and that would carry with it a lot of its own problems.
I got one last story.
Sure,
I got one last story before we wrap up. It's guys, if there's one thing everybody here can do, they can talk. Okay, we can talk for hours and hours and hours. I got one last story. We get a breaking news video that gets sent to us. Okay, well, we had to talk to our lawyers before we released it. Valuetainment broke this video just earlier today, a couple hours ago. Before we did, we emailed General McChrystal, because it's General McChrystal in the video talking about Nord Stream pipeline, okay, and what happened to it. Nord Stream pipeline, a lot of people are saying, well, it was, Ukraine did it. No, it was Russians did it. Putin did it. No, who did it? Now, General McChrystal, to be fair, this is not a regular person. He's not a sergeant. He's not a captain. He's a 4-star general. I've interviewed him 7 years ago. We had a very good conversation together. And so we emailed him to let him know, do you have any comments on it? I don't believe we got a response back from him. We'll play the clip, and I know you've spoken about this a lot. I want to get your reaction on this. So here is General McChrystal, and a gentleman in D.C. got this footage in D.C., sends this video over to us. If you can play this clip.
There's no obvious better solution in Russia. I think Putin ought to go, but there's nobody that I'm aware of standing on the wings.
It seems like there's a lot more radical people standing on the wings too, which is concerning. Like, remember the whole Nord Stream thing? Like, in the beginning of that, I was like, oh yeah, Russia did it, but I don't know. Who do you think did that?
My son is the leader of the energy team at DIA. He didn't think that the Russians did it. Defense intelligence.
So
he
like
didn't
CIA,
think that
DIA,
the
except for
Ukrainians
defense.
officially did it either. I mean, there are people who benefited from it, and that was people who produced natural gas around the world.
Listen.
So if you really want to get conspiracies,
Some corporate.
the United States made more money off that deal than anybody else.
Benefits, right?
But yeah, but that's, because we were huge beneficiaries. We changed our policy. We started providing liquid natural gas, overseas, and, there's no...
I don't know if you guys realize what he just said right there. So a 4-star general. My interpretation, I want to get yours, Dave. Interpretation, America was behind possibly Nord Stream pipeline, coming from a 4-star general who worked under Obama, by the way, just so everybody knows. So I'm going to give it up to you if you want to give a little bit of context behind the story.
Yeah, well, if people don't know, General McChrystal was in charge of the war in Afghanistan under Barack Obama, and he was the head guy, before Petraeus took it over. This was his war. Or after Petraeus took it over. Anyway, he was the guy. They had a falling out. He was the guy who got interviewed in that Rolling Stone piece, and he got drunk with the reporter and started just trashing Obama. And then he published all of it, and then he had to resign because, you're really not supposed to do that when you're a 4-star general talking about your commander-in-chief, which is kind of an interesting insight into how some of the top military brass actually look at the president. There's obviously a lot of evidence when Donald Trump was president, too, that a lot of these people don't really feel like they work for the commander-in-chief, which is disturbing in its own way. But what he's talking about here is the Nord Stream pipelines. I assume most of you guys know what this is. It's a natural gas pipeline that was built from Russia to Germany, and it was blown up. Late last year. They tried to blame it on Russia. It made absolutely no sense that this was Russia. Germany had basically agreed in part of the Western effort to support Ukraine that they wouldn't use the pipeline. But so Putin blowing it up is just blowing up his own pipeline. He can close it from his end. There'd be no benefit to him. But there's an enormous benefit to Ukraine and the West, because the big fear was that it was going into winter. Germany's having a lot of energy problems because they've embraced these insane climate change policies. And so they were worried that the Germans might break in the winter and agree to start getting some of this natural gas from Putin again. If they're dependent on him for natural gas, how much resolve are they going to have to keep supporting this war with Ukraine? So it's not just the issues that he's talking about that, okay, this also benefits all these other oil companies. Look, who had the means, motive, and opportunity to do this? It's pretty obvious who it is. There was also Sal Hirsch, who had a great bit of reporting on this, that it was absolutely America who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Just to be clear, if that's true, this is an act of industrial terrorism against a NATO ally who we're sworn to, defend if they're attacked. And I hope it at least opens people's eyes up to it's not so clear. Look, I love America. I just hate our government. So just to be clear on that, I just hate politicians. That they are not the good guys in this conflict. It's not as simple, and wars are never as simple as Russia bad, Ukraine good, America good, Europe good for helping them. There's a lot more to this conflict than that. Good guys don't commit environmental terrorism to one of their closest allies. And The truth, this is what I've been talking about for a long time, but if you look into the history of this whole conflict, Vladimir Putin is actually absolutely wrong for invading. The war is illegal, and it's horrible, and a lot of people are dying. But Vladimir Putin was absolutely provoked for decades by the West, who, after winning the Cold War, were the sorest of winners and just did nothing but try to degrade and humiliate and poke and prod the Russians. There was a long plan, largely driven by neoconservatives. You can go read about it in their Project for a New American Century back in the 90s, where their attitude was basically like, instead of what even a lot of the great Cold Warriors, like George Kennan, who was the founder of the containment strategy, who was fighting the Soviet Union. His idea was, once the Soviet Union fell, it was like, oh, this is wonderful. You guys aren't communists anymore. You overthrew your communists. Now you can have freedom. Now we can all be friends. And the neoconservatives went, no, now they're weak. Now's when we take over the world. And they used to draw the line down the middle of Germany, okay? And West Germany was with the West, and East Germany was with the Soviet bloc. And that was how Europe was split. And now we've expanded NATO all the way up to Russia's borders. NATO is now taking over the entire. And,
too close.
And they might, from what the establishment people will say is they'll go, what? This is just a defensive alliance. NATO. No, and they are a defensive alliance, except for all of the times that they fight aggressive wars. If you overlook that stuff, like Putin's army is only defensive, except for when it invades Ukraine. And so basically, in 2008, it was announced that Ukraine would be joining NATO. This is what really sent us all down this path. This has been Putin's red line forever, that you can't go any further.
Because it's like having your enemy as your neighbor.
Yeah, they're a very strategic input. Look, from Putin's perspective, NATO is not a defensive alliance. Right. NATO is the European arm of the American military empire. And from his perspective, he's like, I cannot have you taking over Ukraine. There's just too many vital strategic interests here. I can't have all this hardware, military hardware, right on my border. In 1962, when the Soviets put nuclear weapons into Cuba, Jack Kennedy said, that is unacceptable.
Too close.
It is an act of war for you to have nukes this close to us, and I will blow up the world. That was literally what he said. I will blow up the world if you don't move these nukes off of here. And then they got on the phone behind closed doors and they negotiated. And the Soviets pulled their nukes back, and we pulled some nukes back in Europe. And we saved the world. And the fact that we haven't been from day one of this conflict saying, okay, let's negotiate what the deal is here. Okay, how about we pull our NATO hardware back a little bit, and Putin, you pull your military back a little bit. And instead, the Biden administration's policy has been, we will fund this war till the end of time. Like, why? Why is that in America's interest?
It's not.
Luhansk must be ruled by Kiev, not Moscow.
By the way,
how many of you really passionately care about that?
Or Mike Pence is not of his concern.
Listen, man, as far as I'm concerned, and Ron DeSantis was a heroic governor during COVID, and he took on the world, and he did a very good job for you guys, but he's just nowhere near good enough on this issue. He's just waffling on it whenever he's talked about, oh, the problem is the mission is ill-defined. The problem is that we're involved at all. Trump has been phenomenal when he's talking about this issue. Vivek Ramaswamy has been phenomenal, and RFK has just been unbelievable on this issue. It's a proxy war of choice on the border of the country with the largest nuclear stockpile in the history of the world. I couldn't think of a more insane, reckless policy for zero strategic advantage. And all it's doing is continuing the dying.
Matt,
I just don't
thoughts?
I just don't think we need NATO anymore. What was NATO created for? Because NATO was created because all the European countries were decimated through World War II, and NATO was created so therefore America and Russia doesn't come to war again. Basically, those are the last big boys of the military. These countries now are rich. These countries now are making money.
Far richer than Russia.
They can defend themselves, right? And on top of that, every time we go, because every time I was deployed, we're always looking at the news. Why are we going here? Why are we going here? Who's fighting? Why are we fighting for this? Because we're commanded to do so. And so when we're looking at this, why don't we just take care of our backyard? Let's take care of our home. There's so much here. Our kids are at stake right now. That's the border. There's so many issues here. We got to take care of home. I think America needs to be selfish right now. Just like all of us, when we go in business, you want to help your family, you want to help your mom and dad, you want to help the community. But guess who you got to help first? Yourself. You got to build a big base shop. You got to build a business. You got to go field train. Right?
Oh man.
America needs to take care of itself. Get rid of NATO. We don't need any more. Let these countries fight their own wars.
Gang, we are at the tail end of the podcast. Make some noise for all the folks here. Dave, Matt, Ricky, Adam. Thank you, everybody. If you're listening to this and you're with us before we wrap up, we'll be with you guys here in a minute. But I know the ladies, there's a place over there called the bathroom. There's some you guys want to run to. But thank you for your respect of sticking around. For those guys that want to be here at the next live one, we have Vivek Ramaswamy here in 2 weeks, doing a town hall right here in 2 weeks. If you haven't yet bought your tickets, text the word podcast to 310-340-1132. We'll send you the link, or go to 5990live.com. Rob, let's put that in the comment section, 5990live and .com. Get your tickets. We'll see you at this next live event. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye.
Thanks, Vivian. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.